And we're yours.
So is it my turn?
Your turn.
All right. Well, thanks, Rich. I really appreciate this. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to sharing my ideas with you today. I look forward to these experiences. I call it getting paid to do what I would pay to do. So this is a lot of fun for me. I just a little bit of information. I do have this PhD and I am a psychologist, but really the way I like to look at this doctor stuff is basically I read all those books and took all those courses so you don't have to. You know, my job is to take everything I've learned from my training, from my experience, been doing this about 30 years, from my life experience, been on the planet almost 72 years, that's where I got the gray hair, been married twice, the second one going on 35 years, so I got it right the second time, raising 2 sons, running a business. I want to take all of that and make it practical, meaningful, useful, something you can use this afternoon, tonight, tomorrow, at home, at work. In other words, I really, really want this morning to be about real life. You know, not a lot of psychobabble or theory or research, real life. Ways that you can become more influential in your life and the lives of others. Now, I know that you know more about your real life than I do. So I really encourage you to see this less as a lecture and more as a discussion. That means anytime you have a question, comment, concern, please jump in. I'm going to encourage you to err on the side of jumping in. And that's a little bit harder when we're all in different little boxes in different little rooms. If we're all in the same room, it'll be a little bit easier. So I'm going to encourage you to be a little bit more assertive. Anytime you have a question, comment, concern, just jump in. Feel free to interrupt me. I tell the groups that get the most out of my presentations are the groups that interrupt me the most. So in the middle of a sentence, just go, hey, Val, this is so-and-so, and here's my question, or here's my comment, or here's my concern. Feel free to challenge me. If I'm saying something that doesn't make sense to you, that you don't see how specifically could help you become more influential in your life and the lives of others, again, jump in, let me know, because I can't see you in this virtual environment enough to really know if it's landing the way that I'm hoping it is. So feel free to keep giving me feedback on that. I have written 8 books and done 2 PBS specials that have been shown around the country. First book and the first PBS special was on stress. Second book, second PBS special was on people. How do you deal with these difficult people who aren't listening, argumentative, not taking accountability, etc.? And for a while, because I did those 2 PBS specials, people would ask me to do presentations on just those 2 topics. But then I got really clear, life isn't divided into just 2 topics. It's kind of all put together with COVID and supply chain and kids and spouses and traffic and allergies and travel and all that kind of stuff. So I've actually taken everything I've learned from my work with Vistage, done about 700 presentations for Vistage, was a Vistage Speaker of the Year in 2019, very proud of that. All of my work with Vistage, all of my work as a psychologist, and put it into a book called Life from the Top of the Mind. This is a philosophy, a framework, a step-by-step system I've been working on over the last 30 years that I believe can be applied pretty much anywhere in life. When I'm doing trainings on culture, I use this material, leadership, customer service, stress management, communication. I've even got a book on parenting that uses this material called How to Get Kids to Do What You Want. So I really believe this material can be applied anywhere in life. If you like, what I can do is do a drawing so somebody can win a copy of the book. So what I'll do is I'll connect with each of you on LinkedIn after the seminar is over and said, hey, would you like to be in the drawing for the book? All you got to do is say yes, I'll put you in the drawing, and then I'll let everybody know who won the drawing. Now, Richard, if you only want the people who are here to be in the drawing, you need to send me an email, a list of the people who are here. Otherwise, I use the roster from there. So you do that any way you want to do. I'm
Recommendation. Yeah, I'm going to make a note of that, Dr. Crawford.
Okay, good.
I think there's a standard 10-to-1 ratio for those hosting the meeting, get their name in the drawing like 10 times to be standard.
Absolutely, love that. We are going to take a couple of breaks.
There's a chicken modifier though, Jamie. You get a negative score for that.
Fair enough.
A chicken modifier, I love that. And that's Joel up there, right? Is that what it says?
That's
Hey,
Joel.
Joel. Well, Joel, feel free to keep jumping in as you are doing now. Anytime you have a thought question, just jump right in and I'll be happy to address it, just like folks in the room. Okay, any questions for me or about me, or are you ready to jump in?
Go. Let's go.
Okay, cool. So for those of you who have the manual in front of you, that has my visuals on it for the most part. Page 6 of the manual is going to be where we start. So feel free, if you are there, to turn to page 6. Joel, if you'll just get a piece of paper, just a regular, any blank piece of paper that I'm going to have you draw 3 boxes on, and we'll be ready for that when it's come time. So I'm going to go to sharing my slides here. By the way, I would encourage you to have me on speaker view so that this works that way. And also, I would really, if I were kind of presenting this virtually the way I'd want to, I'd really like to see it so that me and the slide are about the same size. There's a way for you to adjust your screen so that that is the case. So Rich, you might want to do this in the room, and Joel, you might want to do this on your screen. You go up to the top of the screen. Oh, wait a minute, I got to turn my little thing on here. That's why. All right, you go to the top of the screen, you'll see a menu that says View Options. That will bring a drop-down menu down. At the very bottom, you'll see something that says Side by Side. Make sure that's checked. 2 little lines will show up between me and the slide. Click on those 2 little lines, drag it to the left, and you can customize your view so that the speaker and the slide are about the same size. I would like to broadcast that way. I really hadn't figured out how to do that on Zoom. So what I do is I show you how to do that. So again, you go up to View Options, you go down to Side by Side, make sure it's checked. Click on the 2 little lines, drag it to the left, and me and the slide should be about the same size. Okay, clarity, confidence, and creativity. Something I think we all need in today's crazy world. New information on the science of dealing with stressed people in life. New information on the science of you becoming more influential in your life and the lives of others. I think it needs to be mostly new information, so I'm not just telling you what you already know. I love this quote from Albert Einstein: problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. I love that. That's kind of a foundational piece for me. I want to bring you new awareness, new information about what's really going on so that you can become more influential. That's why I like to start with clarity when I'm talking about clarity, confidence, and creativity. Because it's been my experience that until we are clear about what's really going on, it's harder to access our confidence and our creativity. Now, I'm not going to give you like 3 hours of totally new information. That would be overwhelming. There's a concept in learning theory called scaffolding, where you tie new information to what you already know. It makes the new information more meaningful, the old information more accessible. So if you've done any work with emotional intelligence or positive intelligence or neuropsych or psychology or 7 habits, any of that kind of stuff, you should be able to fit that nicely into what we're talking about. So this morning, I want to give you new information on the science of what I call the what, the why, and the how. What? What's really getting in the way of our clarity, confidence, and creativity? A new perspective on that. Why is that happening? And that's where I'll go into how the brain works. And then some real specific models, some things you can do immediately, at home, at work, to be able to be more influential in your life and the lives of others. Now, I've learned that after doing 200 virtual presentations since the world went dark a couple of years ago, that just sitting in front of the camera isn't always the best way to do this. So I'm going to move my chair around and use the whole studio, bring in a flip chart. This is what I would do if I were doing this in person. So for those of you who are looking at page 6, you should see these 3 boxes, okay? And Joel, if you'll just make sure you draw 3 boxes on that piece of paper that look like this, 3 long boxes. Leave the box on the left blank for the moment. The box in the middle, put problem triggers at the top of that box. And the box on the right, put problem reactions at the top of that box. I want to make sure that you're able to apply this to real life. And I'm going to suggest everybody here is probably pretty good with dealing with people in life and situations when everything's going great. I want to show you how to deal with those situations that get in the way of your effectiveness. We're going to call them problem triggers. It could be certain types of people, could be adjectives you would use to describe the difficult people, could be overload with contract negotiations, could be the fact that I'm trying to print something, just locked myself out of the other room where the printer is. You know, it could be all kinds of things. Could be kids, could be spouses, could be traffic, could be supply chain. I'm going to be quiet for a moment while you jot down your top 4 or 5 triggers. And by the way, anything you put on this list, you should be able to deal with more successfully at the end of the seminar, with the exception of loss and grief. If you have a question about loss and grief, feel free to ask me about that. But I deal with loss and grief differently than I do stress. Hey, we have a new person. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry to be late.
No problem. Feel free to find a piece of paper and draw 3 boxes on it so that you can kind of participate in what we're about to do. Leave the box on the left blank. The box in the middle put problem triggers, and the box on the right put problem reactions. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment while everybody jots down your top 4 or 5 triggers. Again, could be bad drivers, could be kids, could be supply chain, could be the war, could be COVID, whatever.
What about drawing boxes?
Yeah, there you go. You could do that.
The trigger.
Or emotional events.
Yeah, any situation that you would call a problem trigger, because not all triggers are problematic and not all reactions are problematic. But I want to show you how to deal with those problem triggers and those problem reactions. So after you've written down your top 4 triggers, or 4 or 5, go over here and jot down your top 4 or 5 old reactions that you want to have more influence over going forward. Is it stress? Is it frustration? Is it annoyance? Is it anger? Is it anxiety, resentment, feeling overwhelmed, whatever? No wrong answer. Just kind of jot down a few triggers and a few reactions, and that way you're going to be able to apply what we're about to do to your real life experience. So I'll be quiet while you do that. No wrong answer. I would encourage you to include both personal and professional so that you can apply this both at work and at home. I don't know if you can read this or not, but in a minute I'm going to give you a sample of what your other Vistage colleagues around the world have put down as their triggers and their reactions. And if you hear anything you like, you can add that to your list.
You can see that well, Bill.
Oh, good. Excellent. All right, if you haven't already started on your reactions, go ahead and go over there and do that. I'll give you an opportunity to create both of these lists as we go along. How have you found yourself reacting in the past that it kind of gets in the way of your clarity, confidence, and creativity? Again, could be an emotion, could be a behavior, could be an old thought pattern, could be an old behavior pattern. Any way you found yourself reacting that you want to be more influential over the future, jot down your top 4 or 5 old problem reactions. All right, for those of you who are still writing, please feel free to continue. This is really important because it represents your real life experience, and I want you to be able to apply this to real life immediately. For those of you who are done, I'm going to go over a list of what, as I mentioned, what your other Vistage colleagues have said is triggering them and how they found themselves reacting. And if you hear anything on either one of these lists that you want to add to your list, feel free to do that. Because remember, anything you write down on this list or this list, you should be able to deal with more successfully at the end of the seminar. So COVID is still kind of at the top of the list for a lot of us. Unfortunately, what I think is going on for a lot of people is that China is experiencing Omicron and is shutting down everything for 2 weeks. So I've had Vistage members say my factory shut down, my folks in China, my supply chain. So that could be going on. Not enough time. I have never met a leader that says, I just have too much time on my hands. I don't know what to do with all my time. It's always the other experience. Lack of resources. Again, this could be supply chain. This could be people. I hear a lot of folks having trouble finding enough good people. Could be finances, whatever. There's a lack of resources. Or difficult people, folks who are being stubborn, not taking accountability, not listening, argumentative, irrational. That can certainly be a trigger. Maybe it's our kids in our family. So many of my Vistage members tell me, hey, Bill, I'm pretty good at holding it together at work. It's when I get home, that's when I get triggered. Or it could be just worried about our kids and our family. Uncertainty, wow. Isn't that a big one? I think we've been dealing with that for at least 2 years now, and uncertainty in a general perspective is always a trigger, but I think it's become even more of a trigger based on what we've all been going through with COVID. Or it could be as simple as just deadlines, deadbeats, in-laws, outlaws, whatever. Just allow this list to represent any situation in your life that has gotten in the way of your clarity, confidence, and creativity, which you'd call a problem trigger. If you've worked with Harvey Goldberg in the past, he talks about being triggered by like not being listened to or being disrespected. That could be one as well. So I ask your Vistage colleagues, all right, when we're dealing with all this stuff, how do we find ourselves reacting that, again, we want to have more influence over going forward? And they say, well, yeah, we get stressed. We also get frustrated. We get anxious from time to time, angry, start to worry about stuff all the time, start to doubt ourselves, our own judgment from time to time. Feel confused, annoyed, resentful, overwhelmed, lose focus, lose sleep, get depressed, drives me crazy. So again, just allow this list to represent any way you found yourself reacting. And if you want to add any of those to your list, feel free to do that. So here's how all this works. This is the trigger. This is the reaction. This triggers this. Makes sense. And we don't like feeling stressed, frustrated, anxious, angry. So when we feel this, what we often do is go over here and try to change whoever or whatever we think made us feel bad in the first place. And hey, I'm a big believer. Anytime you can change something in your life and you feel better as a result of it, I'm a big fan of that. But have you noticed how many of the situations over here we really can't change? COVID, lack of time, resources, deadlines, uncertainty, difficult people. Have you noticed sometimes when we try to change difficult people, they don't always say, thank you for sharing, Sometimes they get worse. So when we run across something or someone that we think is making us feel bad, that we want to change but we can't, that actually triggers another reaction. This reaction is now more intense because there's an additional sense of frustration or powerlessness associated with it. In other words, we feel more stressed, more frustrated, more anxious, more angry. And when we try to deal with life, we're stressed, frustrated, anxious, or angry, we're just not very effective. So now we feel less effective. The situation seems to get worse, which triggers another reaction, which then makes it seem worse, which triggers another reaction and makes it seem worse and reaction and worse, reaction and worse, reaction and worse until something explodes. I call this the cycle of stress, frustration, anxiety. And I think this is the what. Remember, we're talking about the what, the why, and the how. New information about the what, the why, and the how. And the new information here is it's not just that we're getting triggered. Because if we just got a little stressed and we could flip up to clarity, confidence, and creativity, hey, where's the problem? I think it's getting caught in this ever-escalating cycle that is the real problem. So what I want to do today is bring you new information, help you raise your level of awareness about how to break this cycle. Now, in order to do that, we need to make sure that you're not falling into a trap that a lot of people fall into. The trap that a lot of people fall into is they mistake the what for the why. So in other words, they think, well, the reason I am stressed, frustrated, anxious, or angry is because of all these situations. But that makes all these people and situations way more powerful in our life than we want them to be. Plus, there's something else going on here that's actually causing how we think and feel. There's a gentleman in an early cognitive psychology world that came up with a model called the ABC model. So he calls this A for the adverse event, and he calls this C for the consequence. He says the problem that people find themselves in is they believe that A causes C, and now we got to change all this before I can change how I feel and think. He says the good news is A doesn't cause C. A is filtered through B, and B causes C. So we got to figure out what B is, because frankly, it's not about just being triggered. I mean, just think of a gun, okay? A trigger doesn't fire the gun. A trigger triggers the firing pin. The firing pin fires the gun. If you've got a gun with no firing pin, you can sit there and pull the trigger all day long and nothing happens. So what we don't want to do is make this the cause of this. We want to figure out what B is, and that's the why. Remember, we're talking about the what, the why, and the how. So I'm going to go back to sharing my slides here, talk about the why. When I was getting my PhD, I was a big fan of the why. I wanted to know, why is this so common? Why do we find ourselves caught in this cycle so much? Why do we get into an argument with someone, at the end of the argument, we can't remember what we've argued about? Why, as a leader or a parent, when I'm trying to give information to someone, do they seem to get so resistant and so defensive? Or does it seem to go in one ear and out the other? And I learned a lot in my psychology program, but I wanted to know more. So there was a time where I actually left the College of Psychology and went into the College of Biology, and I took a course called the Biological Basis of Behavior. And in it, I learned that everything we think and feel and do and say, how we react to others, how others react to us, all has to do with how the brain processes information. So I've spent the last 30 years of my life creating a system, a philosophy, a framework that actually shows people how to access their best by accessing a very, very specific part of the brain. And how to avoid the stress, frustration, anxiety, resentment, the stuff that gets in the way of our clarity, confidence, and creativity by avoiding a specific part of the brain. Now, the brain's very complex. People spend their lives studying the brain, so we're not going to get lost in all this terminology. I basically just want you to think about the brain in three parts: top, middle, and lower brain. Because each of these parts of the brain do something different. And the more we understand their function and can influence the process, the more influence we can have in our life and the lives of others. So, lower brain's called the brainstem. I'm sure you've heard of this. This is where our fight or flight responses are located. It is also the part of the brain that regulates certain systems like breathing, muscle tension, heart rate, blood pressure, etc. We can just call it the lower brain. Middle brain's called the limbic system. Some people call this the emotional brain because this is where our emotions are triggered for the most part. We can just call it the middle brain. What a lot of people don't know about this middle brain, however, and I didn't know this till I took this course, is that this middle brain acts as a gatekeeper. Or in today's terminology, it acts as a scanner, a processor, and a router. It scans incoming data, processes it or interprets it, and then either routes it down to the lower brain or up to the upper 80% of the brain called the neocortex, what I call the top of the mind, where we have access to our interpersonal skills, our problem-solving skills, our clarity, confidence, creativity, etc. So here's where it all starts and here's how it all works. Data comes in from our five senses. This is just data. Or some thought happens to pop into our head, and it is first scanned by the middle brain. Now, if the middle brain doesn't see a problem, got a remote here in my hand, no problem. Sends the information up to the top of the mind. Lower brain works in the background, regulating breathing, muscle tension, heart rate, blood pressure. Everything's great. But if the middle brain senses anything or anyone it doesn't like, anything or anyone it has determined to be a problem or a trigger or a stressor or a threat of any kind, or anything or anyone that is similar to any problem, trigger, stress, or threat we've ever experienced in the past, it sends the data immediately down to the lower brain, bypassing the top of the mind. Now, at this point, the lower brain can only do two things: fight or flight. Some people call it fight, flight, or freeze, which is true. I'm going to lump the freeze in with the flight part. Because when this happens, certain things happen in our body. Blood pressure goes up, muscle tension goes up, heart rate goes up, and that is all designed to get us ready to either strike out or withdraw. In the latest brain research, this is called downshifting because it happens so quickly. And again, what we need to know is that it bypasses the most intelligent, capable, purposeful part of who we are. Now, in a fight or flight situation, this is exactly what we want to happen. If we're walking down the street and somebody jumps at us from the bushes, or if we're driving down the road, somebody slams on their brakes in front of us, we want to be able to react without thinking. Because if we had to cognitively process that, wait a minute, they just slammed on their brakes, I wonder if we would hit them by that point. So anytime you need to react without thinking, in order to be safe in a physically dangerous situation, this lower brain is the perfect part of the brain to go to. Problem is we're being thrown down into this old reactive brain in situations where we need access to our best interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, clarity, confidence, creativity, etc. If you've read any of Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence, he calls this neural hijacking or emotional hijacking. Regardless of what we're calling it, however, my hope is this is explaining a lot of things. This is what PTSD is all about. This is what panic attacks or anxiety attacks are all about. This is why people sometimes say things that don't make sense. This lower brain is not the rational part of the brain. This is why people sometimes make bad decisions. We could call this the science of effective decision making, because we make our best decisions from this executive function part of the brain. This is why, as a leader or a parent, when you're trying to give information to someone and they're upset, either with you or something else, they don't get it, because they're not in the part of the brain that can process data. And this isn't just me saying this. People around the country and around the world are recognizing that until we understand what's going on here and can influence the process, we're just going to be at the mercy of this old middle and lower unconscious parts of the brain. So remember, we're talking about the what, the why, and the how. We got new information about the what. It's not just that we get triggered. It's the reaction makes the original trigger seem worse, and we find ourselves caught in an ever-escalating cycle. Now we know why. This middle brain is misinterpreting something or someone negative as dangerous and throwing us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with danger. So you probably know, as long as we've been on the planet, the role of the middle brain has been to keep us alive as a species. So not too long ago in our evolution, being stressed or worried or anxious or even angry might have even kept us alive. Now, unfortunately, it just throws us into this lower brain and limits access to our clarity, confidence, and creativity. By the way, when this lower brain gets triggers, not only is it blood pressure, muscle tension, heart rate, there are chemical changes that are happening in our brain and body, mostly adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Cortisol being the big one, it's actually called the stress hormone. These chemicals will then manifest themselves as stress, frustration, anxiety, resentment, confusion, annoyance. And when we try to deal with life from this lower 20% of the brain, we're just not very effective, because this lower brain isn't designed to deal with these kind of issues. So now we feel less effective. The situation seems to get worse. That has the middle brain going, whoa, more negative data, didn't mean for that to happen, sends it right back down to the lower brain. And now you can see how this external cycle is replicated by this internal cycle. And it's not like this happens every once in a while. If we're not careful, this can become a lifestyle for us, and we can find ourselves trapped in this lower 20% of the brain, trying to deal with rather complex personal and interpersonal situations from this very limiting part of the brain. Okay, so now we got new information about the what. It's not just that we get triggered, we can find ourselves caught in an ever-escalating cycle. Now we know why the middle brain is misinterpreting something or someone negative as dangerous, throwing us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with danger. The rest of the seminar is going to be about the how. First thing I'm going to do is give you a behavioral model you can do anywhere, anytime, and teach to others, by the way, that will show you how to shift from the lower brain up into the top of the mind, and not only access your clarity, confidence, and creativity, but actually change the chemical makeup of your brain and body from adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol to serotonin and endorphins, chemicals that help us feel better and think clear. Then, once you know how to get to the top of the mind, I'm going to give you some more information about how to stay there. How do you rewire the brain in a relatively short amount of time, so that living in and coming from this clear, confident, creative part of who you are becomes your new habit. You may have heard of a concept called neuroplasticity. It means the brain is always rewiring itself. I'm going to show you how to do that in a relatively short amount of time so that you are no longer reacting to life in that way. Then, because you are influential in other people's lives, I'm going to give you another model about how to get other people to shift from their resistant brain to their receptive brain, so you can create a true solution-focused conversation with them. I call the seminar Life from the Top of the Mind. It's what the book is all about. It's what I get to go around the world teaching. It's what I'm looking forward to teaching to you. It's the what, the why, and the how of you becoming more influential in your life and the lives of others. Okay, because I can't see you, I'm going to turn the seminar over to you now for some feedback. What questions, comments, concerns do you have about anything you've heard so far? And if you don't have any, are you liking what you're hearing? And if so, specifically, what are you liking? What do you find helpful about this? Seminar is now yours.
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, Bill, Coach Dell
Yes.
here. Yeah, so the thing that stood out to me I found real helpful. A lot of the concepts I'm aware of, but I like the level of depth that you've gone into understanding these things. And specifically, the thing that I liked was the idea that when someone is operating in the lower brain, that, it's almost, it is useless to talk to them. You mentioned like a parent and me, in the field of youth sports. Obviously, I've spoken to, hundreds, if not thousands of parents who are emotional, in an emotional state, for whatever reason. And obviously trying to engage with them in the moment is, can feel impossible. So it definitely inspired me to implement a policy of, or just understand that I'm not going to get through at that moment. And maybe we, talk the next day or whatever it is, allow them to cool down. We do have a 24-hour rule for parents cannot address a coach, like immediately after a game, for instance, if they're, irate because their kid didn't play or something, or they feel like, something was unfair. We just say you cannot address the coach, in that first 24 hours, because it may not be a healthy interaction. So anyways, that's what stood out.
Love that. Love that. I love the 24-hour rule. I think that probably ought to be a rule for the whole world, don't you think? Let's give it 24 hours before we jump into some emotional experience. Now, in part 3 of the system, I'm going to give you a 6-step model that has the potential to address these folks, even if they're angry after 24 hours. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, Joel.
We go, sorry, go ahead, Richard.
Joel.
Go ahead, Joel.
So we, like the shortcut for the process, definitely like not thinking of it as a system, but what I have gone to is, rather than, the yelling back and forth, or especially when like my wife and my middle son, who is now a full-fledged teenager, yelling at one another, is to shortcut it with like hugs, especially when they don't want the hugs, but like, a hug and like, a kiss on the cheek or something else like that. But like, it's getting out of that mindset, because the lower brain, they just want to argue and fight.
Yeah.
And so like separating them, and then, unconditional love. It does not work on my wife. Like, she does not want hugs, but the kids, the kids will still accept them.
Well, when we get to part 3, I'll show you a way of engaging your wife where I think she's going to be more open to what you're saying. But hey, the fact that your teenager is open to a hug is very impressive. So congratulations to that.
Okay.
It's interesting to me, this middle step, this B step, and your analogy about the trigger, the firing pin, and the shot, the bullet. I think it's a very clear analogy, and I've never heard it explained that way. So I appreciate that, Coach Daly, what you were saying about the 24-hour rule. It seems so obvious, and I wish I would have thought about it that way. I coached Little League for 17 years.
Oh, goodness.
But I told the parents, I'm too busy after the game. I want to talk to you, knowing they were probably going to be ticked. But I just said, call me tonight after 9 o'clock. Just thinking it's going to be a lot easier, and I'm not going to be face to face. But it's interesting just hearing someone else's perspective that's a lot more advanced than what my thinking was. I think we kind of were trying to get to the same place, but yours was a lot more thought out than mine was. But this middle step of A doesn't go to C,
right.
A goes to B, and we don't even realize B is there.
That's right.
So that's a new learning for me here.
Cool. And by the way, I don't think we've welcomed, is it Jamie down there? Jamie, is that you? Hi.
It is me.
Yes, it does, Jamie. but
Oh,
we
wait a
have
minute, you're
Michelle-
there. Okay, yeah, I didn't know if somebody had joined. I apologize for
That's
that.
Michelle Acosta.
You're in the room.
And David Wallen joined.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome, folks. So, are you liking this? Is this helpful, enjoyable?
Yes.
All right. Stop me if anything doesn't make sense or you want me to go over anything more, give you examples, etc. So let's kind of put all this together so we can understand how it all fits. Let's take everything we've learned, put it into one slide. Here's what we need to know about triggers. We've always been dealing with triggers. We're dealing with triggers today. We're going to be dealing with triggers tomorrow. Here's what we've learned. The triggers aren't the problem. Everybody thinks the triggers is the problem. The triggers aren't the problem. The problem is this middle brain, that yellow part of the slide, remember, is misinterpreting something or someone negative as dangerous, throwing us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with danger. This is where we get angry, stressed, frustrated based on these chemicals. And if we're not careful, it's real easy to get caught in the cycle in the lower brain, just like it's easy to get caught in the cycle. So given that the middle brain is the controller, remember, it's the scanner, processor, router part of the brain. It is the part of the brain that determines whether we go down to the lower brain or up to the top of the mind, where we have access to all of the qualities, characteristics, and skills that allow us to become more powerful, influential in our lives and the lives of others. So given that it's the controller, I'm going to show you how to retrain, reprogram parts of that middle brain so that in the future it starts interpreting this in a way that allows us to access this. The problem at the moment, however, is both the middle brain and the lower brain are both unconscious. And if they're unconscious, we don't have any awareness of them. And if we have no awareness of them, we can't influence them. That's why I love this quote from Carl Jung that says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life. Now, we can't make the lower brain conscious. It's too far down the back of our neck. But we can make parts of the middle brain more connected to the conscious, influential upper 80% of the brain. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Here's the thing, however. In order to be able to retrain the middle brain, we've got to already be in the upper brain. So remember, we're talking about the what, the why, and the how. The how is a three-part system. First thing I'm going to do is give you a behavioral model you can do anywhere, anytime, and teach to others. That's going to show you how to shift from the lower brain to the top of the mind. Got to do that first. Then I'm going to give you some more information about how to rewire the brain in a relatively amount of time so that living in and staying in and coming from this clear, confident, creative part of who we are becomes our new habit. Then, as promised, because you are influential in other people's lives, whether at home or work, I'm going to show you how to get other people to shift from their resistant brain to their receptive brain, so they truly hear and understand what you're wanting them to know. Now, in the past, my Vistage members used to say, hey, Bill, if you'll just show me how to do number 3, I don't even need number 1 and number 2. Because so many of our issues have to do with people, don't they? But here's something I want you to think about the next time you're dealing with a difficult person. You never want to tie your peace of mind to another person's state of mind. That is a recipe for stress, frustration, anxiety. Doesn't mean you don't care. It just means you don't want to have to change somebody else before you can bring your best to the situation. Because if you have to change them first, you've just tied your peace of mind to their state of mind. And have you noticed often when in the past, when we've been trying to get people to change, they sometimes mistake that as criticism and can get worse. So I am going to show you how to get people to shift from the resistant brain to the receptive brain. It's just that we've got to know how to get to the top of the mind and how to stay there while they're being difficult in order to pull that off. Which means we need to have access to our clarity, confidence, and creativity as much as possible. So here's the good news. You are now much more clear about the problem than, say, 95% of the people on the planet. Because 95% of the people on the planet think A causes C. They think this makes us this. That will forever trap them in this cycle unless they can change all of this. You now have new information. You now know this, remember, is being misinterpreted by this middle brain. And my stress, anxiety, frustration, resentment, annoyance, confusion is a chemical change in my brain and body based on this middle brain misinterpretation. That's huge, because I'm going to show you how to change that. A lot of people talk about feeling out of control when they find themselves caught in this cycle and they want to regain control. Frankly, I'm a big fan of regaining control. But most people try to control this so they don't feel this. That ties our peace of mind to their state of mind. We don't want to do that. When I'm talking about regaining control, I'm talking about this upper 80% of the brain, this clear, confident, creative part of who we are, regaining control from the old lower reactive brain. The purposeful, proactive brain regaining control from the reactive brain. Now remember, this lower reactive brain normally already controls certain things. It controls heart rate, kind of hard to control. It controls blood pressure, well, that's even harder to control, but it also controls breathing, and that is not hard to control. That's why if you've ever done any mindfulness or yoga or Tai Chi or stress management or martial arts, any of that, breathing is always part of the process. It just has to be done in a certain way in order to be effective. So if you don't already have your own model, I would encourage you to use one of these two models, 5x5 or 4-4-4. I like the 4-4-4 models what the Navy SEALs use to refocus, regain control. Good enough for them, good enough for me. It's real simple. You just inhale for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4. Easy. For those of you who've heard of box breathing, you put another 4 on the end of that, and that makes the box. 5x5 is also very easy. You just inhale for a count of 5 and exhale for a count of 5. Either one of those will begin to work because you are breathing now slowly and deeply and purposefully. That means you're coming from the purposeful brain and you're counting. Did you know there's only one part of the brain that can count? If you ever find yourself dealing with someone who's having a panic attack or an anxiety attack and they want you to help them, ask them to count backwards from 100 by 2 or 3. By the time they get to the mid-80s, certainly the mid-70s, you're going to notice a change in their demeanor because it requires this upper 80% of the brain to literally regain control from the lower brain. This is the panicky brain because the upper 80% of the brain is the only part of the brain that can count. Now, if you want to make this first part of the model doubly powerful by having the upper 80% of the brain regain control by literally taking over 2 functions, normally controlled by the lower brain, just say the word relax on the exhale and kind of let your shoulders drop. We carry a lot of our stress and tension in the back of our neck and shoulders. See, normally the lower brain controls muscle tension and normally the lower brain controls breathing. But when you're breathing, counting, saying the word relax on the exhale, letting your shoulders drop, you are literally having the upper 80% of the brain literally regain control by literally taking over 2 functions normally controlled by the lower brain. Now, it can't be this. Relax, come on, relax. Can't be that. You got to do it a little bit more dramatically. You got to give it its due. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. And by the way, I'm going to tick off the numbers on my fingers because that gives my upper 80% of the brain one more thing to think about. And so if my goal is to get my thinking and control in the upper 80% of the brain, ticking off the numbers will look like. So I'm going to inhale for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, say the word relax on the exhale. And it needs to be kind of dramatic. So it looks like this. Relax. See, the idea is to do it in a way where that is the only thing you can think about because your middle brain doesn't want you to do this. It's kind of like when your wife doesn't want a hug. She doesn't want a hug. I'm upset and I'm going to talk about it. So your middle brain is trying to hang on to your worry, your anxiety, your anger, your frustration because your middle brain thinks if you're not worried, you're not safe. If you're not anxious, you're not safe. So we're not trusting this middle and lower brain to determine who we are. The breathing and the saying the word relax will begin to change that. You may need to do it more than once, okay? Depends on how deeply we are in the cycle. For those of you who want to see the science behind this, you can Google how breathing calms the brain, the science of slow, deep breathing. I love this one, the effect of diaphragmatic breathing on attention, negative affect, and stress in healthy adults. Tons of data out there on it. And by the way, the last page of the manual has all of my references on that. So here's the good news. Breathing, counting, saying the word relax on the exhale will actually take you from bad to better. You're going to feel just a little bit better as a result of this. Here's what I've noticed about Vistage folks. You're not okay with better. You don't want to stop at better. You want to be able to access your best regardless of the situation. So in order to access our best, number one, we got to know what part of the brain our best comes from. Number two, we got to do more than just breathe and relax. Breathing, relaxing is good. It will pause the cycle, but it won't break the cycle. I've had people tell me, hey, Bill, I've tried the breathing before, and yeah, I do feel a little bit better afterwards, but then here comes that anxiety, or here comes that difficult person. So if we want to break the cycle, we got to move beyond what are called the physiological aspects of stress, anxiety, or frustration, and engage what I call the psychological aspects of stress, anxiety, or frustration. There's a lot of these, and they're very powerful, but the most powerful of the psychological aspects, interestingly enough, are the power of questions. Questions actually determine what part of the brain we're in. I call them the search engine for the brain. There's a book out there called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. It was recommended to me by a Vistage member. I hadn't read it, but I love the title. So here's the thing. If we were to kind of use this computer as a search engine, and we were to type in a question and punch send or enter, it would go searching its databanks and the web for the answer. But it wouldn't evaluate the question. It wouldn't determine, is this a good question or a bad question or a helpful question or not a helpful question? It would attempt to answer any question we ask. Our brain's the same way. When we ask a question, it doesn't evaluate the quality of the question. It tries to answer any question we ask. And here's the problem. When we get triggered, when we're feeling stressed, frustrated, anxious, angry, overwhelmed, confused, annoyed, resentful, we are asking what I call BS questions. BS stands for brainstem, by the way, just in case you were worried about that. Maybe something else, like, what is wrong with these people? Or who taught this idiot to drive? Get off the road. Or, man, why do I have to keep saying the same thing over and over? Why don't people listen the first time? Or why do I let these people get to me? I know better than that. See, they're all understandable questions, but they're brainstem questions. They're questions about the problem and the pain of the problem, and they'll throw us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with painful problems, like, why is this person coming at me with a knife? That's a pretty good brainstem question. Why is this person driving the wrong way on the freeway? That's a pretty good brainstem question, because it requires a fight or flight response in order to be safe. But since we now know we don't want this lower brain in charge and we don't want a fight or flight response, we want to come from the top of the mind. So let's just do this. Let's breathe and relax on the exhale until you feel in control. Again, may take 2 times, may take 3 times, depends on how deeply we are in the cycle. Once you feel a little bit better, and then if we want the top of the mind to be totally in charge and questions are powerful, let's make sure we're asking what I call top of the mind questions. Top of the mind questions are questions that can only be asked and answered by this upper 80% of the brain. And they should provide even more clarity in terms of what's going on here. For example, one of them is, was this thought, emotion, or action chosen on purpose? Well, no, we don't get stressed, frustrated, anxious, angry, overwhelmed, confused, annoyed, resentful on purpose. So that's a no. Next one's a good old Dr. Phil question. Okay, well then how's it working for me? Is this helping me create the life I want, Do I like being this way? Most people say no. It's understandable, but it doesn't really help us get the results we want for the most part. Third question I love. It goes a little bit deeper, especially for leaders. It's one of the reasons I love working with Vistage. It says, is this the way I want to be defined? See, I think we have to ask ourselves, whenever we find ourselves caught in this cycle, are we defining who we are? Or are we being defined by difficult people, difficult situations in our life? Because when we say this makes me this COVID stuff really stresses me out, these difficult people really piss me off, my kids, traffic drive me crazy. Whenever we say this makes me this, what we're doing is we're giving the difficult people, difficult situations in our life the power to define us. or control us. I don't think we want these people to have that kind of power. So if we don't want them to have that kind of power, I think we got to be willing and able to take it on ourselves. So my solution is that we define ourselves, but we do this from this upper 80%, this purposeful, powerful part of the brain. And there's a concept that I encourage leaders to adopt that I think gives us some clarity about our influence in life. I call it the videotape concept. Now, nobody uses videotape anymore, but work with me here, I think you'll like it. It basically says leaders, parents, people who are influential in other people's lives. If we're one of these folks, then we should be willing to interact with these people in such a way that that interaction could be recorded and used as a training film for how we would like them to interact with everybody else. Now, we're all human beings, so I'm sure we can all think of a time in the past we're going, boy, I'm glad that one wasn't on videotape. So it's not about being perfect, but it is about being purposeful. See, we represent to someone how powerful people get things done. They're looking at us as a model for how powerful people get things done, and they will emulate what they see us do. So let's see if we can use these questions to bring some more clarity about what's going on. Because now we got some clarity, right? Hey, am I doing this on purpose? No. Is this working for me? No. Is this how I want to be defined? No. I love the fourth question. Might be more powerful than all three put together. It says, would I teach or recommend this way of being to my child, my children, or someone I love? Man, as a parent, that just bottom lines it for me. But now I'm starting to work with high school kids, college kids, people who don't have kids. They still love these questions because it brings so much clarity, doesn't it? I mean, I've yet to meet anyone that would teach someone they love on purpose to be stressed and angry and frustrated and overwhelmed, confused, annoyed, and resentful. So I call these questions the 4 criteria. And I think we can use them as a criteria for not only what we don't want, but what we do want. In fact, when I was doing my presentations in person, about to do that again, I would ask the people in the room, say, hey, are we doing this on purpose? Is this how we want to be defined? Is this really working for us? Would we or teach or recommend this to someone we love? And of course they said no. I said, okay, so what if we were dealing with the difficult people, difficult situations in our life in a way that meets the 4 criteria? In a way that was more purposeful, in a way that we believe has the potential to be more effective, in a way that does define us in a way we want to be defined, and in a way we would teach or recommend to someone we love, what would that look like? And they said, well, I want to be more confident. I want to be more calm, creative, centered, optimistic, clear, authentic. Love the authentic part, so you're not having to fake something. There's a great quote from Sidney Poitier that says, you don't have to become someone you're not to become better than you are. So I'm not trying to change anybody in here into somebody you're not. You all have your own style, your own personality. I just want you to be able to access your best by, number 1, knowing what part of the brain the best comes from. And I want you to be able to do that authentically, so you're not having to fake something. Your colleague said, hey, I want to be more kind, more influential, certainly, purposeful, resilient, flexible, productive, in control, empathetic. Now, you might have a different list, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to make your list a little bit later in the seminar. I think we can agree, however, this list does meet the 4 criteria. I mean, chosen on purpose, yeah. Think there are qualities and characteristics here that will help us be effective? I think we can agree on that. Certainly defines us the way we want to be defined, and isn't this exactly what we would teach or recommend to those we love? So remember at the very beginning of the seminar, we talked about breaking the cycle. We learned that breathing, saying the word relax on the exhale is good. It will pause the cycle, but it won't break the cycle. So here's what we're doing now. We're shifting from a focus on the problem to a focus on the solution by asking ourselves these very purposeful questions. In other words, let me ask you, how valuable would it be if in the future, instead of finding yourself reacting like this, you could respond like this? That's my smoke and mirrors part of that. Isn't that cool? I love that part. Now, let me tell you what I'm saying and what I'm not. I'm not saying we have no right to feel this way. You have a right to be as upset and angry and frustrated and annoyed as you want to be. But are you doing it on purpose? Is it really working for you? Is that how you want to be defined? Would you teach or recommend it to someone you love? The answer is no. Let's make a distinction between a reaction and a response. Richard, at the very beginning, talked about the difference between the reactive brain and the responsive brain. So a reaction is just a reaction. We're just acting the way we have in the past. I mean, we've all done this in the past, not a big deal. A response actually comes from the Latin spondere. It means to pledge or to sponsor. It's all about a new way of being. Notice also, we're not just talking about being less of this. You know, people come to me as a psychologist and say, Bill, I want to be less stressed. I want to be less angry. I want to be less frustrated. But frankly, just being less of this does not make us this. However, choosing to be this way automatically has us not doing that way because we're making that choice from this very purposeful, powerful part of the brain. And I think these questions can help because whenever we find ourselves in a situation, we can go, wait a minute, am I doing this on purpose? Is this really working for me? Is this how I want to be defined? Would I teach or recommend this to someone I love? That's going to bring some clarity. But then it's not just about not doing this. You say, okay, what if I were dealing with this particular person, this particular difficult situation, in a way that was more purposeful, in a way that I believe is going to be more effective, in a way that does define me, in a way I would teach to someone I love? What would that look like? And here's the cool thing. The brain will answer any question we ask. Here's the bad news. Just coming up with a nice list of words doesn't get us there. It shows us where we want to go, but it doesn't get us there. In order to get there, we have to be able to imagine being this way in life. Because if we can't do it in our imagination, there's no way we're going to be able to do it in life. So here's how you do that. Ask yourself a question. Have I ever been clear, confident, and creative? Well, of course, you wouldn't be in this group if you weren't. So who are you when you're clear, confident, and creative? What's your tone of voice like? What's your body language like? How do you deal with situations? How do you deal with people? And how does that contrast to what this looks like here? If you can imagine being this way and then imagine bringing that into a situation, that begins to actually change the chemical makeup of your brain and body. I'll show you a little bit about that in a minute. So you breathe, you relax on the exhale, you ask those questions, you imagine being the way you want to be. Then what I'm going to encourage you to do is to notice the change. Because at this point in the model, you will be feeling more calm, more confident, more in control. Because each one of these steps engage the top of the mind. Plus the N in notice helps me spell brain. I like my model to spell things. You would not believe how long it took me to make it spell brain, by the way. But I like it because it's all about understanding how the brain works, top of the brain, middle brain, lower brain, and having a model that spells brain that will not just shift you to the top of the mind, it will actually get you there in a way where you're now identifying the qualities and characteristics you want to bring to life, excuse me, and you'll begin to change the chemical makeup of your brain and body. Okay. So Rich mentioned it would be cool if we took a break about every hour. That is totally fine with me. So it looks like we're about that time. Does that make sense, Rich?
That makes sense. Let's do that.
Okay. How long do you want your break to be?
Oh, you guys want? 5 minutes? 5 minutes is good? Okay.
Hey, cool.
5 minutes. Great. Thank
See you in 5.
Again, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks for honoring the break. Appreciate it. All right, let's go.
Okay. So, hopefully everybody's enjoying this, but because I can't see you, I need some feedback. And hello to Michelle. Hopefully you're kind of getting this. I know you kind of came in a little bit later, so hopefully this is working for you, making sense. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment and let you tell me, is this helpful? Are you liking it? Anything specific questions you have? I just need to know how this is landing with you.
You can't see, you're shaking your head, so.
Yeah, we're all nodding. Yeah, I'm nodding.
Oh, okay, good.
Bill, I came in late, and I'm sorry for that, but And so I'm getting the gist. I looked at the past slides. One of the things that Richard and I work on all the time, because I kind of feel like I live in my lower brain, that's where I hang out. Is Richard always talks to me about when I go into a trigger state, what happens, which I believe that is the left side. And then I go into inquiry instead of reaction. And it's a simple swing thought, but that's really been helping me a great deal. And I find that when I don't do that, then I have to apologize to someone after. When I do that, I find that it's a much less frequent that I have to do that. Is that conception kind of what we're talking about here? Is that still the right swing thought, if you will?
Yes, swing thought. I love that too, by the way. I have a seminar called Avoiding Playing Brainstem Golf. Golf from the top of the mind, you know.
I need that article, please.
Yeah, it's a thing that I do for golf clubs and country clubs. I haven't actually put it into an article yet, but it's you know, golf. You know, they talk about Jack Nicklaus said the thing is between the ears, right? So that's certainly true. But yeah, inquiry is all about curiosity. It's about listening. It's about making sure you get it right. All of that comes from the top of the mind. And so we can't be reacting while we're being curious and engaged and really eager to hear what someone has to say about something. So I think that's a great thing. I remember Peter Senge wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline. And one of the things in his 5 disciplines is balancing inquiry with advocacy so that we're not always just in that advocacy role. So yeah, congratulations. Excellent. Others, are we good, or have you any questions, or are you ready to keep going?
Thumbs up, ready to go.
Cool. Feel free to jump in with any questions you have as we go along, and all of you that are on Zoom, feel free to do that as well. And by the way, I know I'm going to give you a lot of information today. I don't expect you to remember all of it. Just pay attention to what resonates with you, what you really like. And I want to make sure that you have access to me after the seminar is over, because I bet things are going to come up after it's over. And if you want my best thoughts about any situation, personal or professional, after the seminar is over, all you got to do is email me, and I will be your consultant for free for life by email. I enjoy getting emails. When I'm traveling, a lot of time in hotel rooms and airports. I'd much rather be answering emails from you guys than watching CNN. So feel free to do that, because I think some things are going to come up that you want my thoughts about. Also, I want to make sure that you know I have a YouTube channel. It's got about 500 short videos on there, almost 1 million views. I'm going to celebrate when I get to the 1 million. And I've been doing it for quite a while. I generally post one every week. And I use my Life from the Top of the Mind system to talk about leadership or parenting or sleep or confidence or anxiety or COVID or all that kind of stuff. So anytime you want to see a particular video on how the top of the mind would address this particular topic, you could go to the channel. Just Google Bill Crawford, PhD, YouTube, and that'll take you to my channel. And then you can search the bar up there for whatever topic you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing the slides here and give you one more tool to bring this to life. It's basically a map or a decision tree that takes everything we've learned so far, puts it into one slide. In the future, when we find ourselves triggered, which we will, it's not about never being triggered again, now we've shifted our perspective. We got new awareness. Rather than thinking that this makes us this, now we go, wait a minute, I now know what's going on. Just means data being sent to the wrong part of the brain. Or my lower brain is controlling my reactions and limiting my clarity, confidence, and creativity. That's new awareness. Then we can begin to use our old reactions as a valuable signal that I need to change what part of my brain is in control. Of course, if the answer is no, well, that's not going to work, because we're going to stay trapped in the cycle. But if the answer is yes, you now have a model that spells brain that will shift you from the lower brain to the upper brain. Okay, I was doing a seminar up in the Northeast, and a Vistage chair said, "Hey, Bill, this is really cool stuff. It reminds me of a video from the Conscious Leadership Group. Have you seen that video?" I went, "No." So we found it on the web and played it on the break, and I went, "Whoa, how cool is this?" Because I want to give you as many ways of thinking about this whole process as possible. So I'm about to show you the video. I've taken the video and added the brain stuff to it. And it has to do with what real estate folks call location, location, location. See what you think.
Location, location, location. Brought to you by the Conscious Leadership Group. Find them on the web at www.conscious.is. Animation by Graham Franks, www.grahamfranks.com. One question that conscious leaders ask themselves over and over is, where am I? To support leaders in locating themselves as they ask the question, where am I? We offer this tool, a line, a simple black line. At any moment, all leaders and all people are either above the line or below the line. Our location describes how we're being with what is occurring in our life right now. If we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. If we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Stop right now and simply ask yourself, where am I? In this now moment, am I above the line or below the line? Typically, when people are below the line, they believe certain things about the world. For example, they believe there is not enough. It could be that there's not enough money, or time, or space, or energy, or love. People below the line also believe that their story about the situation is right. People below the line also believe that there is a threat out there. Something or someone is threatening their desire for approval, control, or security. And people below the line see the situation as serious. The deeper below the line they are, the more serious things look. People below the line tend to behave certain ways as well. They tend to cling to an opinion, find fault and blame, gossip, explain, rationalize and justify, get overwhelmed, and avoid conflict or pursue conflict for the sake of winning. When people are above the line, they believe that learning and growing are more important than being right. They believe that all people and circumstances are their allies, here for their growth. They believe that from a distance, almost everything is funny. People above the line live in curiosity, listen deeply, speak unarguably, question all their beliefs, and live a life of play. Now, knowing what you know about being above or below the line, where are you? One thing to know as you consider this question. We are hardwired to go below the line. Literally, our brain is programmed to perceive threat, and when it does, a chemical cocktail courses through our veins, and we go below the line. This reaction was designed to help us survive in the presence of a real threat to our physical survival. An issue for modern-day leaders is that often our brains can't tell the difference between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego or identity. We react and get defensive when we experience a threat to our ego. So in many ways, being below the line is natural and normal. But when we are below the line, we're not in a state, literally brain state, of high creativity, collaboration, innovation, and relational connection. We're simply trying to survive. Leaders today can't thrive if they're in survival mode. So the first activity of conscious leadership is location, location, location. In this now moment, where am I? Telling ourselves and others the truth about our current location begins the great conversation.
When I saw that, I went, whoa, how cool is that? Because it gives us another simple way of really raising our level of awareness. Remember that quote from Albert Einstein? Location, location, location. Am I above the line or below the line? Or another way to ask that question, what part of the brain am I in? And maybe a more powerful question, what part of the brain do I want to trust to interpret what's going on, to drive my thoughts, decisions, and behavior? And if you've decided that you don't want to trust this lower reactive brain because it's not serving you and you wouldn't recommend it to someone you love, well, now you have a model that spells brain that will shift you from the lower brain to the upper brain. Now, there are times to use the brain model and times not to use the brain model, okay? I'm not saying in the middle of a conversation, if you get triggered, you're supposed to go, wait a minute, I'm supposed to breathe and relax and ask myself 4 questions. And no, that's not going to work. However, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been triggered by an email or a text message or a voicemail or something on social media or something on the news, or traffic or bad drivers? If you've ever been triggered in those non-interpersonal situations, that's where you want to start practicing the brain model. because that you can stop, breathe, count, say the word relax on the exhale, do that until you feel in control. Ask the question, okay, right now, given that I'm dealing with this particular situation, what is the statement I want to make about who I am? What would I teach to someone I love? If my kids were sitting here going, hey, mom, dad, teach me how to deal with blank, what would I want them to learn? In terms of my being effective and purposeful, what are the qualities or characteristics I want to bring to life? Your brain will answer any question you ask, then you imagine being that way. Here's the thing that the video pointed out. The brain doesn't know the difference between a real and imagined experience. When I'm doing my seminars specifically on stress, I'll have people imagine biting into a lemon. And I'll take them through the whole process of imagining the lemon, biting into the lemon. And everybody in the room is going, even though they know there's no lemon. So here's the deal. Their body is reacting chemically, because the saliva and the muscles are chemical changes in our brain and body, based on the imaginary lemon, when they know there's no lemon. So what that tells us is the brain will react chemically to any image we hold in our mind, whether it's happening or not. That's why ruminating or running over worrisome situations over and over in our mind is not a very good idea. Brain doesn't know the difference. It thinks it's happening now and triggers those stress chemicals. Have an argument with someone. We run that argument over and over in our mind. Here come those chemicals. Somebody cuts us off on the freeway and we go tell somebody about it. Here come those chemicals. So we want to make sure that we are kind of using our mind as a pharmacy and only going for the chemicals that serve us, that we would recommend to someone we love. In order to do that, we've got to recognize that the heart of the brain model is AI. People get really focused on the breathing, and the breathing is fine. It will pause the cycle, but remember, it won't break the cycle. Once you're in control, you got to ask yourself the question, hey, what's the statement I want to make about who I am? What would I teach to someone I love? And let your brain come up with certain qualities or characteristics, and then imagine being that way. That's a huge component in the success of this, and then notice the change. Okay, we're talking about the what, the why, and the how. This is part one of the how. It's the model that spells brain, that shows you how the brain works and shifts you from the lower brain to the upper brain. We're about to go into part two. Any questions, comments, or concerns about part one that I can answer before we go into part two?
Question.
Sure.
Imagine being that way. Can you give an example of what that means?
Sure. So let's assume I'm working and I get an email and it says, hey, Bill, we've just canceled your next 5 presentations. Okay, well, that's interesting. I can still feel myself going down. Or I get an email and these are a better one, from the airline that say, we've just canceled your flight. So I can start to feel the cortisol go down the back of my neck, but I'm not dealing with anybody right there. So I do this. I go, okay. Relax. Okay. So am I getting stressed on purpose? No. Is it working for me? No. Would I recommend to someone I love? No. So, okay. How do I want to deal with a canceled flight in a way that makes the statement about who I am? You know, I go around teaching this, so I ought to be able to handle that kind of stuff. What if my kids were sitting there going, hey, Dad, you know, how do I deal with things like that? They're outside of my control, that have a tendency to trigger that frustrated part of me. I could say, okay, I want to not feed that part of the brain. I don't want to kind of trust that part of the brain. So I'm going to trust the top of the mind, because if I need to reschedule these presentations in another place, or if I need to find another way to get to where I want to go, that all comes from this upper 80% of the brain. So who am I when I am clear, confident, and creative? And if I were tackling this particular situation from that clear, confident, creative perspective, what would that look like? What would that feel like? Notice the change. I am no longer stressed. I'm no longer frustrated. I'm into problem solving from the top of the mind. Was that helpful?
So I'm just trying to tie in the imagine piece of it. So you're thinking, as you're doing that process, you're imagining.
Yeah, you got to be careful when you trail off, because I can't hear you there. So use your outside voice and I'll probably hear you.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, I'm just focused on the imagine piece of it. So the part of your processing is, right, when you talk out loud, it's imagining yourself being calm and right, being that person who you want to be. It's the imagination piece.
It is, it's the imagination, but make sure that you're choosing calm and confident.
Right.
Yeah, centered and influential, in control and empathetic. In other words, you don't want to be just calm because you want to be effective. So if you'll choose 2 or 3 qualities or characteristics that blend yin and yang, the calm, confident, and influential, something like that, now you're going to be bringing the best of who you are, because it's not just about laying back and being calm, it's about being calm and more effective.
May I offer something here?
Sure.
So all you have here, a printed outline that I received from Bill, that I had thought I had sent to Kinko's to get published and delivered to my unit yesterday by noon, and at 4:30, after I finished a group meeting, I got a call from Kinko saying, "We didn't print it, you sent it wrong." And after about 3 minutes on the phone, I said, "Cancel the order, that's fine." I was in a triggered state, because what happened was Bill wasn't sure that he could get the material printed and shipped here in time. So I said, I will take on that responsibility. And so then I said, well, I'll go to my office and I'll print it there. So I went to my office. Inside, I have a door that shuts to my space within inside the office. And it was locked and I don't have a key. So I had to call a locksmith to let me in so that I could print the forms. And then I realized I was out of paper. So I was in a triggered state. These folks need this. I made a commitment to Bill and declared the forms are going to be there. So I went home and said, I will print them here now. And my printer said, you're out of ink. I went to my ink supply and there was only 2 colors. So you got a saran blue printout. And then I said, that's not up to my standards. So this morning, I sent you the forms and said, here's the document that we're going to be using. This is for your use. I will have something for you at the meeting. And I had to use what David Wall and you and I practiced a lot in order to not say, F it, what the hell, why did I do that? Why did I agree to do that? What is this? Blah, 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 blah. And Joel just said, I'm echoing, so we're going to turn off one of the pals. Anyway, I just want you to know that what we talk about here, I had to use last night. And I got through 85% of it, and I finished the final 15% when I sent you emails for it. So
perfect example. Yeah, perfect example. That's life. See, stuff happens. And in the past, we thought this would make us feel that way. Now we have a new perspective that it's this middle brain misinterpreting some negative situation. Everything Rich talked about was negative, but it wasn't dangerous. But the middle brain doesn't know the difference, and it misinterprets negative as dangerous, throws us into that lower brain. This is where we get angry, stressed, frustrated, annoyed, either with ourselves or Kinko's or whatever, and then we get caught in the cycle, and that screws with our health because we're triggering these chemicals that mess with our immune system, and yada, 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 yada. So this is just a different way of looking at life so that we're choosing the qualities or characteristics we're bringing. Now, it will take practice. So what I would encourage you to do is to look at the opportunities to practice in a way where, getting emails, getting text messages, finding yourself in a situation like Rich talked about. That's a great place to begin to practice the brain model. Anything you practice, you get good at. Okay, yes.
One additional question here. This is all really, really, I think, helpful for all of us individually. Will you be adding any piece here of what we can do to help those around us that get in a triggered state? For sure. Because I think we've all found ourselves in that situation. I'll give you an example of what I'm thinking about. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. This is 30 some odd years ago. We just moved into a new house. And as I'm looking at the alarm panel, I somehow set it off. So now the alarm is going off. I have no clue how to disarm it. My 5-year-old is running around the house crazy. My 2-year-old is screaming. My wife is going ballistic because I don't know how to shut this thing off. I walked over, opened the drawer and pulled out the owner's manual and sat down at the table and started to read the owner's manual, which made things worse for everybody around me because I wasn't doing anything. And I'm wondering, just in a sample like that, where everyone else is in this reactionary mode, will there be something that we can do to help them? We're not going to have the opportunity to explain everything that you're going through with us today, but I think that's also something that I'm just wondering about.
Yeah. So remember, we got 3 parts of the system. Part 1 is what we've just been through. It's how to shift to the top of the mind. Now you know how to do that. Part 2 is how to stay there. We got to get good at staying there. So this isn't just something we do every once in a while. Then part 3, which is I am going to give you a 6-step model for getting other people to shift out of that lower brain and up to the top of the mind. So once we get to part 3, I'm going to turn the seminar over to you and take your examples of the people in your life that you want to be more influential with. When they get triggered, what do I do, Bill? And I'll show you how to use that model to get them to shift.
Mark has something to say to Jamie.
No, I was just gonna say, with your example, it's almost when the people around you, they want to see a reaction.
Oh, totally, totally.
This is
You're doing something.
This is
you're
a
not
huge
sitting there-
crisis. Why aren't you
Why aren't you doing
pissed
something?
off, or why aren't you, jumping up and down? Because naturally, I kind of take my time with things, but I've had people say that to me before.
Why aren't you doing
I
something?
want the big reaction.
Don't you get it?
Yeah, I did. And here's what's going on. They're misinterpreting your calmness or your purposefulness as you don't get it. You don't understand. This is a really big problem. Why aren't you reacting? And so they're seeing your calmness in a way that is being misinterpreted. So one of the things that I do, not necessarily you need to do this, you can either let your people know what's going on in advance so that when they see you be calm, they'll know what's going on. Or one of the things that I do when I'm dealing with someone who's really upset, I actually try to match their energy a little bit. So if they come to me and say, Bill, I go, whoa, yeah, man, I can see how you're concerned about this. Tell me more about that. Rather than going, oh my goodness, well, it sounds like that's really bothering me. So matching their energy, because here's what I want them to know. I want them to know that I get it and I'm concerned and I'm with them. So I'll kind of turn up that intensity just to show them that I'm with them in that way. So if that helps, that's great. Okay, ready to go to part 2? How do we stay in the top of the mind? That's going to be a little bit harder, but it's really important. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep doing the brain model over and over and over and over and over all day. I had a Vistage member say, well, Bill, this is great, but I'm going to have to do the brain model 50 times a day, man. Give me a way of going into life already in the top of the mind so that I don't get triggered in the first place. That's what we're going to be talking about. Now we know how to shift, which is have the top of the mind regain controls. Here's how we stay in the top of the mind so we don't get triggered in the first place. Now it all starts with awareness about how the brain works. This is something you know that only about 5% of the people on the planet know. This middle brain, remember, is the scanner, processor, router. It determines whether we go down to the lower brain or up to the top of the mind. So in order to live in the top of the mind, where this is our new default position, this is how we are most of the time, the first thing we have to decide is, okay, well then how important is this? So ask this question, answer this question to yourself. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to be able to access your best regardless of the situation? And if it's an 8 or a 9 or a 10, what we're saying is our best is really, really, really important. That's why I call it our highest purpose. For a while, until it becomes a habit, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a relatively short amount of time, this has to become one of, if not the most important thing in our life. Now, sometimes when I say that, I get some pushback. People say, well, wait a minute, Bill, my kids are the most important thing in my life, or, my family, that's the most important thing in my life, or my business, people are depending on me, that's the most important thing in my life, and I get it. because I got kids and I got a family and I got a business and I know how important all of them are. Have you noticed sometimes things happen with your kids and your family and your business that you can't control? So I'm going to suggest you never want to make the most important thing in your life something that is beyond your control. That is a recipe for stress, frustration, anxiety. So what if we make coming from the best of who we are the most important thing in our life? Well, guess what? We're automatically the best parent we can be. We're automatically the best relationship partner, the best family member, the best leader, the best business person, the best decision maker. I have found no downside to making this important. We just have to decide it's important, and here's why. Notice these lines going from the middle brain down to the lower brain, middle brain to the upper 80% of the brain. These are what are called neural pathways in the brain. And a neural pathway isn't just a thought process. It's a hardwired routing of thought, emotion, and behavior. In other words, there's a reason why this is so common. There's a reason why it's so easy to go from here to here, and it happens in just a nanosecond. It's because we've been doing this on some level ever since we're little kids. So we all come to today with certain neural pathways that will continue to throw us in the lower brain if we change nothing. It also speaks to why we have a tendency to keep doing the same thing over and over, but it's not giving us the results we want. I love this quote. It says, sometimes we stay in hell a long time because we've learned the names of the streets. In other words, this has become familiar. We know how to survive here. And we've done it so much, it's just an old habit. We turn left on Family Boulevard to Angry Street. We could give tours here, we're so good at this. So what we want to do is start creating new neural pathways, going from the middle brain to the lower brain and letting some of these older neural pathways to the lower brain fade away. They won't all fade away because we don't want them all to fade away because we want them in case we need them for a fight or flight situation. We know, in order to create the new neural pathways, it all starts with awareness. So for those of you who have the manual, turn to page 6 of your manual. For those of you who drew 3 boxes on a piece of paper, turn to your 3 boxes. This is where you wrote down your problem triggers and your problem reactions. Here's what I want to do. I want to show you how to change the problem into the solution. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to scratch out the word problem reactions in that box on the far right. And somewhere above the box, write the words valuable signal. Valuable signal. That little red graphic you see on the slide is a graphic of a little red light going off in our dashboard. You know, we're driving down the road, little red light goes off in the dashboard. That little red light isn't the problem. It's there on purpose. It's part of the solution. It lets us know something needs our attention, something needs to change. I love this quote that says, stress is a signal that something needs to change. Suffering is when we don't make the change. So if we can start to see our old reactions, our stress, our frustration, our anxiety, resentment, annoyance, not as how we're being made to feel, not as our failure to cope, but a valuable signal that lets us know something needs to change, we catch it earlier and it becomes part of the solution. Let's make the original trigger part of the solution as well. I want you to scratch out the word problem triggers, and somewhere above that box, I want you to write the words practice field. Practice field. We're going to turn the problem into the practice field. You know, sports teams have a practice field. They go there, they run their offense, their defense, they figure out what the other team's going to do. They practice, so that when they get in the game, they not only know what to do, but it becomes almost automatic. We don't have a practice field, but I'm going to suggest life is going to give us plenty of opportunities to practice. I'm also suggesting we're always practicing something. That means we're either going to be practicing this or we're going to be practicing this. I'm going to suggest we don't need to practice this anymore. We're already really good at it, you know? If we ever need to be angry, stressed, or frustrated, we kind of know how to do that. This is going to take some practice. So let's see what you want to practice. This is going to be your opportunity to create your list. On the box on the far left, I want you to write the words highest purpose above the line. Speaks to how important this needs to be in order to make it a habit. And then I'm going to be quiet for a moment while you jot down the qualities or characteristics you want to bring to life in the future when you're dealing with one of your triggers. I've got clear, confident, empathetic, creative, curious, wise, patient, flexible, influential, authentic, resilient. Your other colleagues have said centered, optimistic, purposeful, flexible, productive, in control, empathetic. No wrong answer, but you just want to make a list of what you want. Otherwise, all you're going to be trying to do is stop the problem because you won't know what you're going for. No wrong answer. I would encourage you to make sure you're writing it in terms of what you want versus what you don't want. Some people put less stress or less frustrated, but you don't want to be just less of that. You want to be more confident, tolerant, purposeful, in control, optimistic, centered. If you're having trouble imagining how to bring any of these qualities or characteristics into any situation that doesn't involve people, I haven't given you the people model yet, but that doesn't involve people like traffic or locked out of the room and out of ink and out of paper. If you're having any trouble figuring out how to do that, ask me and I'll give you my best thoughts on how to do that. Okay, for those of you who are still writing, please feel free to continue. This is really important because it represents the qualities you want to be able to access going forward. Here's what you've just done that's very powerful. You've brought meaning and purpose to life in a brand new way. If we're willing to see life, especially negative aspects of life, as a practice field, where we choose qualities or characteristics that meet the 4 criteria, the statement we want to make about who we are, what we teach to someone we love, and being effective and purposeful is our highest purpose. That has the middle brain seeing this as an opportunity to practice this. That has it accessing the upper 80% of the brain and will begin to rewire the brain if we'll make it important enough, our highest purpose. There's a quote from a gentleman about purpose, about meaning and purpose. He says, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by a lack of meaning and purpose." A lot of people go, yeah, you psychologists, you just sit around making stuff up, don't you? I mean, what about real life? That's easier said than done. Well, this guy wrote this quote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by a lack of meaning and purpose." He wrote that quote while he was in Auschwitz, German concentration camp. Name's Viktor Frankl. Wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Library of Congress calls it one of the 10 most influential books in the United States. So if he can find meaning and purpose in Auschwitz, it helps him not just survive, but to come out of there with a brand new theory of human behavior, write a book that becomes a bestseller. If he can do that in Auschwitz, I think we can deal with the challenging people and situations in our life if we'll make it important enough and if we're determined to live a life of choice versus a life of chance. Because a life of choice is a life of conscious action. From this conscious part of the brain, we are consciously, purposely choosing qualities or characteristics and consciously bringing them to life. A life of chance is just a life of unconscious reaction. We're just reacting to whatever person or situation happens to chance into our life from this old unconscious parts of the brain. So for those of you who want to get really good at this really quickly and keep it from fading, for those of you who want to know how to make it a habit, here's what we got to do. We have to start before we get triggered, because remember, this is about going into life already in the top of the mind. When we're triggered, we got to do the brain model to get back up. So we got to start before we get triggered. So I suggest we start before it's even possible to get triggered, which means you wake up, and before you get out of bed, before you look at your phone, before you turn on the TV, you breathe, relax, ask yourself a question. What's my highest purpose this morning? Just the morning. I know some of the people I'm going to be dealing with, some of the situations I'm going to be in. Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? Look at your list, choose 2 or 3 qualities or characteristics. Imagine being that way, and then go into the morning practicing being that way. Anything we practice, we get good at. And practice doesn't mean we have to do it perfectly. We just want to do it as purposefully as possible. But the key is you're going into life already in the top of the mind. So many of us go into life neutral or worried or stressed or frustrated or annoyed. And unfortunately, it's real easy to get triggered because we're almost already in that lower brain. But if we'll go into life clear about what's important, how we want to define ourselves in the situations we're going to find ourselves in, that puts us in a very powerful position. Just the morning. Then around lunchtime, you reboot. Very powerful. If I were to reboot this computer, wouldn't just restart it, we'd put everything back where it goes. You could do the brain model, you breathe, relax, ask the question, what's my highest purpose this afternoon? Just the afternoon. I know some of the people I'm going to be dealing with, some of the situations I'm going to be in. Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? Choose 2 or 3 of your qualities. You go into the afternoon practicing being that way. Anything we practice, we get good at. Then around the drive home, sometime between the afternoon and the evening, you stop, you reboot.
And it's a beautiful thing. But winning is really the key. When you start winning, y'all start playing for each other. It's not you don't worry about who. So you don't play for each other first and then win. No. But
hey, Andrew, thank you. Somebody was talking about winning, and I love winning, but I'm not sure how that fits into what we're talking about here.
I fixed it.
Okay, thank you.
Even has a question.
Probably a silly one, but like, so I get what you're talking about, but like, let's take Ukraine right now. You wake up, you're Ukrainian, the Russians are bombing the shit out of you every day.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in fight or flight, or are you in your lower brain, or are you finding your highest purpose?
No, that's a good point. That is a truly dangerous situation. So that's really important. Whenever you're in a truly dangerous situation, then it's not about being confident and creative and centered. It's about survival. So you do whatever you do to survive.
So that's a lower brain activity, is that?
Yeah, but it's an appropriate lower brain activity. You know, you're basically making decisions about surviving for you and your family. So, you know, you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so food and shelter and that kind of stuff is at the very bottom. And if you're being bombed and you're just running, and boy, that's all about survival. So yeah, that's not that.
Look up. Talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I've not heard that.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah. Google it, because it talks about how we have to meet certain needs before we really can get in a sense either belonging or self-actualization. And he talks about the higher needs of that. But that's we got to get those basic needs met. And if those aren't met, then we are all about survival.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for jumping in. So driving home, you stop, you ask yourself a question. What's my highest purpose this evening? Who do I want to be with the most important people in my life? People that I love the most and who love me the most. So many of my Vistage members tell me, hey, Bill, I'm pretty good at holding it together at work. It's when I get home, that's when I get triggered. And yet these are the most important people in our life. And I think it's because we're not going into that environment clear about our highest purpose. So you want to stop on the way home, stop in the driveway, do something, but you want to kind of make sure you're going into that time as if your kids were watching you and taking notes, and you wanted them to emulate what they saw you do. Because remember, you're the powerful adult that they're mimicking. If there's someone you love more than life itself in that particular environment, you want to make sure you're engaging them in a way where they feel that way. You don't want to allow the world to kind of determine how you are just because you may be tired. So you're going into that already in the top of the mind. Matter of fact, here's the deal. Remember, we're talking about going into the morning, the afternoon, the evening, in the top of the mind. Remember, when you're in the top of the mind, you're triggering serotonin and endorphins. When you're in the lower brain, you're triggering adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. I think the reason most people are exhausted when they get home is not because they've done a lot of physical labor, but they've been worrying and triggering and anxious and triggering those chemicals. And those chemicals are exhausting because they're designed to put us into a hyper alert state, but we're not designed to stay there all day or even for any long period of time. We're designed to get in there and run away and then go back to homeostasis. So if you found yourself being triggered all day long, that's why we're exhausted at the end of the day.
Bill,
yeah, just a quick question, Bill. When you say pick your highest purpose, do you pick one or do you pick three?
I like 2 or 3 because I want to make sure there's one that's powerful and one that's more graceful, and then another one that might be kind of more around one particular person or situation that I'm going to deal with. So confident, I love confident. I love influential, and I want to be centered. For me, I also like joyful. I like to enjoy what I do. So I make kind of looking for, well, how can I enjoy this as part of my highest purpose? And it can change depending on the going into the morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever it is. I would say 2 or 3. Good question. All right, so here's what we're talking about. We're talking about dividing the day into thirds. I'm not trying to do this all month or all week or all day. You start in the morning, you go into the morning, clear about how you want to be. You reboot around lunchtime, you go into the afternoon, clear about how you want to be. Reboot on the evening, go into how you want to be. And by the way, rebooting right before you go to sleep is also a good idea. And I do have a model about how to fall asleep and fall back asleep if you wake up in the middle of the night. If you want me to go through that, I would be happy to do that. Okay, I will do that. I'll do that right after this. So here's what we're doing. We're using life's transitions for clarity, an opportunity for clarity. Talking about clarity, confidence, and creativity, it all starts with clarity. So waking up, going into life is a transition. Going from home to work is a transition. Going from morning to afternoon is a transition. Afternoon to evening is a transition. If we'll start going into those times of the day, already in the top of the mind, clear about what we want to practice, you'll be amazed at how this works, if you're willing to practice it enough. So people say, this is great, how long will it take? Well, they say it takes about 21 days to change a habit. So if you want to be habitually coming from the top of the mind, you want to practice this every day for about 21 days. When I'm doing workshops with an organization where I'll do this half day, and then we'll do a 21-day practice period, and then we'll come back and talk about, okay, what worked, what didn't, and I help them fine-tune the system. Well, people tell me that around day 7, day 8, day 10, maybe day 14, something clicks and all of a sudden it's easy and it's normal. And that's because they've been practicing and rewiring the brain in a way that makes it doable. In fact, remember that quote, a life of choice is a life of conscious action, where a life of chance is a life of unconscious reaction. Yeah, that's true. And we can turn that quote on its ear now that we know about practicing. We can say, also, here's what is true. A life of choice or positive conscious action, if practiced enough, can become a life of positive unconscious reaction. And wouldn't it be cool if after 21 days, 2 to 4 months on the very outside, by the way, this is just our new reaction. This is our default position. We just normally, naturally do this without even having to think about it. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about rewiring that middle brain. So it sees this as an opportunity to practice this, and you do that enough, and it just becomes automatic. Now, to be very clear, it's not about never feeling bad, okay? It's not what we feel, but what we feed that creates our experience of life. Because see, in the past, when we felt stressed, frustrated, anxious, annoyed, we looked over here for who or what made us feel that way, and we found ourselves feeding the cycle. Now we know feeding the cycle is feeding this lower 20% of the brain. As we decide that coming from the top of the mind is the most important thing in my life, my highest purpose, and we start practicing that, now we're feeding this upper 80% of the brain, and the part of the brain we feed becomes the dominant part of who we are. So here's a map that puts part 2 all together. I call it the LTM, or the Life from the Top of the Mind system, part 2. How do we rewire the brain in order to live in the top of the mind? It starts with awareness that every thought, emotion, and action defines who we are and who we are becoming. So good news is you've now got clarity about who you are at your best. That's that box on the far left. We turn the problem into the practice field. This is no longer the problem. It's an opportunity to practice defining who we are in a way we would recommend to someone we love. As if someone were following us around with a video camera, that could become a training film for everybody who looks to us for leadership and inspiration. Of course, if the answer is no, it's not that important, well, we're going to stay trapped in the cycle because there's just too many old neural pathways that will keep us trapped. If the answer is yes, we now have access to the 4 criteria, the statement we want to make about who we are, what we would teach to someone we love in order to be effective and purposeful. We start in the morning, reboot around lunchtime, reboot on the drive home, do that for about 21 days until we have rewired the brain. Okay, part 2, by the way, is a little bit more philosophical. Part 1's a little bit more behavioral. But part 2 is a little bit more philosophical, but it's designed to fit in with any philosophy you already like or have. Spiritual, religious, 7 habits, emotional intelligence, positive intelligence, crucial conversations, any of that is designed to fit with this particular model. I just now want you to be able to tie the brain to that. Questions, comments, concerns about part 2?
What are you thinking, Michelle?
Say again.
I'm calling Michelle. I'm asking her what she's thinking.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. No, so far, yeah. Hello. So far, it's really good. I mean, I feel like, that definitely highest purpose of trying to always be intentional in how you're processing information, and then how you, I don't know if project's the right word, but whatever your reaction is, and being 100% intentional about that. Yeah. That's something I feel every day. And this 4-part process is really good, because I feel overwhelmed. So I add another trigger when I'm trying to be, highest purpose all day, but I can't control how my day is going, no matter how much I schedule it, or I have this meeting or whatever. I don't know how the meeting's going to go. I don't know if something's going to happen with my car, and all of a sudden I'm on the side of the road and my whole 4 hours is gone. You know what I mean? So this compartmentalization is, I think it's going to be really helpful, and I'm going to try and do that daily, instead of just, oh, I think it might be good to piece this out today.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to try it all the time. One less thing to stress about.
Absolutely. And what it does, it takes your concept of intentionality and it brings it to the morning, and then it brings it into the afternoon, and it brings it to the evening, and it has you feeling really good about who you are. And not only do you feel good, you're actually triggering chemicals that make you feel good. So that's even a plus. Now, I would tell you and others, if you really like this whole idea of dividing the day into thirds, you need to put something in your environment that reminds you to do that. Because otherwise we'll have a tendency to just do what we've always done. Whether it's a Post-it note or a little stuffed animal somewhere, or a little alarm on your watch or your computer, you want to put something in your environment that says, okay, all right. Or here's another thing, here's what you can do. You can tie the new habit to an old habit. So if you brush your teeth every morning, okay, then as you're brushing your teeth, choose the qualities or characteristics you want to bring into the morning. As you buckle your seatbelt, go driving somewhere, that's a habit. Okay, tie that to the qualities you want to bring to the drive to work. As you unbuckle your seatbelt, talk about the qualities you want to bring to going into your office, and then into lunch and that kind of stuff. So you can tie this new habit to an old habit, but it's got to be purposeful for at least, probably 21 days or so in order to make it automatic. Okay, would you like me, if you don't have any questions, would you like me to show you how to fall asleep and fall back asleep if you wake up in the middle of the night?
I would love
Yes,
it if
please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Please do that. Well, I was listening to somebody earlier talk about how everybody is sleep deprived these days. And I think it's because we've gone through a really traumatic experience with COVID. And not only was killing people, but it was also screwing with our lives and our routine and what we normally do. And so that can really mess with sleep. So here's the problem with falling asleep and falling back asleep when you wake up in the middle of the night. Have you noticed that when we're trying to do that, our mind is racing with stuff? And it's generally not racing with wonderful, happy, loving thoughts. Have you noticed? It's generally racing with something we're worried or anxious about. Well, worry or anxiety triggers 3 chemicals: adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Those are the wake-up chemicals. Those are the fight or flight chemicals. In other words, we're laying there trying to fall asleep, triggering chemicals designed to wake us up. The same chemicals we would be triggering as if someone were breaking into our house, just at a lower level. So that's why it doesn't work. So what we want to do are trigger chemicals designed to put us back to sleep. So I would encourage you to see your mind as a pharmacy. And now that you know what the brain model is, you can use the brain model to do this. So what do? You start off by breathing, counting, saying the word relax on the exhale. Do that until you feel in control, a little bit better. But it's that. Relax. You want to do that until you feel centered and in control. Then BRA, you want to ask a question about the solution in the future, not about the problem in the past. The question I like to ask when I'm wanting to fall back asleep is, okay, how would I like to be feeling right now? Sleepy, drowsy, right? That's where I want to be. So now, BRAI, I is for imagine. You imagine a time in your past when you were feeling really sleepy and really drowsy, and you hit the pillow and you fell asleep. That triggers melatonin. I could actually start feeling it happening as I was walking you through the process. Melatonin is the chemical that puts us back to sleep. Then you notice a change. BRAIN, breathe, relax, ask, imagine, notice. At this point in the model, you will be feeling a little more sleepy, a little more drowsy. You just repeat the model until you've produced enough melatonin to put you back to sleep. But the reason it works is you're now laying there producing chemicals designed to put you back to sleep versus chemicals designed to wake you up. So I do have a YouTube channel that walks people through this process. You can Google Bill Crawford, PhD, YouTube, and go to the channel and put how to fall asleep or fall back asleep in the search bar, and it should come up. If it doesn't come up and you want to see the video or show it to somebody, email me and I'll find it for you and send you the URL. But I love the comments below. They're going, oh my God, this works. And it works because the brain doesn't know the difference between a real and imagined event. So when I am imagining certain ways of being, and by the way, a lot of people say that they imagine falling asleep on the couch because that is just a quicker imaginary experience than sometimes falling asleep in bed. But you imagine doing that way, that begins to trigger those chemicals. And by the way, if you fall asleep about the same time each night, your body will start producing melatonin in anticipation of the sleep. Also, if you'll do about the same thing, about 15 or 20 minutes each night before you go to sleep, that will start to trigger melatonin as well. For me, it's a hot bath. Whether I'm on the road or at home, I take a really hot bath. I only lay in there for just a few minutes, but it's enough for just to totally relax every muscle in my body. And that tells my brain, okay, Bill is going into his sleep cycle here. It starts to produce melatonin. I'll get into bed. I'll read something, not Stephen King, okay, but read something you want to dream about, but not a novel. I don't know, maybe Life from the Top of the Mind could be a great book. Or, any of the Malcolm Gladwell, the Daniel Pinks, or any of that stuff that's interesting, but not compelling. So you're not wanting to find out what happens next. You want to read something, and so my brain knows that taking a hot bath and reading some book is a precursor to sleep. So now every time I do that about a certain time at night, it is producing melatonin, and it's easier for me to fall asleep when I do that because of that. Hope that helps.
So Bill, I'd like to offer something here if I can.
Please do.
When I was having my prostate cancer treatment last year and was having pain and discomfort and the rest, with a sleep app that I have on my phone, there are a series of sections, and one of which were guided meditations that actually talked me through this process, enabled me to go to sleep, and when I would wake up, to go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm at the place where I don't need the meditation. I just say to myself and imagine the tape, and it starts with the breathing exercise I do, and I fall asleep.
There you go.
So that's a personal experience.
Yeah, they talk about how our phones are kind of the bane of our existence. Well, they do have some pretty cool apps too. So that particular type of app I think is a great idea. And the reason now you can do it without the app is because you've created these new neural pathways and your brain just now automatically goes there. So congratulations. Especially, by the way, in the middle of dealing with a real kind of challenging, scary situation that involves, taking stuff that is designed to kill the negative stuff, but also produces some side effects from what I understand.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, Coach.
Hey, quick question, Bill, regarding I just missed one of the hormones that are produced, the chemicals. adrenaline, cortisol, and what was the other one? Because those two.
Noradrenaline or norepinephrine. It's a chemical that triggers a fight. It's a neurotransmitter that triggers a fight or flight. So it's adrenaline, noradrenaline, or norepinephrine, either one. They're the same thing. And cortisol. The big one really being cortisol, really. And adrenaline. Adrenaline and cortisol are these two things that are just kind of will amp us up in a way that makes sleep. Because it thinks we're trying to wake up. It thinks we're trying to solve some problem. And remember, the middle brain has a tendency to see problems as dangerous, and so throws us into that lower brain.
I was looking at his sleep, how all the sleep thing. I found it. I wanted to save it.
Jamie.
I'm looking Bill, I was just looking up on Google how your fall asleep video.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, as well. Okay.
Excellent. Yes. Yes, you know, when you do over 500, I've got probably some video on almost everything. I've got one called "My Anxiety is Making Me Anxious," where I talk about how anxiety. Oh, yeah. Okay, feels like maybe take a break every hour, and we're about to go into part 3. I know you've been eager to hear how do we get these people to shift from the lower brain to the upper brain. So you want to take.
Sure, of course, it's all their fault. We got to fix
Of
that.
course, absolutely. You send them to me, I lay my hands on them, I heal them, I send them back to you. It's all good.
Them help us.
Okay, well, let's go, let's see here. Quarter after, okay?
Sounds
We
good.
do need 10 minutes. Let's take a walk. Get up, move around.
Yeah.
Careful, Dr. Thank you.
Work. He about to get some work done.
I will pause the recording.
You got to be careful about telling her she shouldn't worry or she shouldn't think about negative things, because she probably won't say, "Thank you for sharing. I feel so much better now."
So she won, and you know my wife very well. It's like you've been at my house. So duly noted, and I'm right along with you.
You could probably say something like, "Hey, I know you really care about people, and I know you're really sensitive, and I know you hate to see anybody mistreated. And I'm wondering if sometimes that's keeping you up at night in a way that, you know, isn't really serving you. I don't know. There's this dude. He's got this crazy video. I'd love your opinion on it. It's real short, but it talks about actually."
I love your opinion on it.
He's giving you context.
That's right.
She loves when I say that anytime. I love your opinion.
That's a great
So
one.
that's a pearl.
That's a nice gem.
That'll be happening about 5 o'clock this evening,
That's helpful and
depending on the traffic.
Anytime you want anybody in your family to read a book or watch a video or do something you think will be good for them, ask them to evaluate it for you. That will have them viewing it and reading it from a different perspective
That's
versus,
a pearl.
yeah.
Well, that is not an advocacy position, is it?
No, it's
An invitation for, yeah.
But it also has a high success rate. I mean, let's just be honest, that's a pearl.
Hold on, I just want to be clear. If you clearly want a loved one to watch this, are you saying we're framing it in, I need you to evaluate it for me?
I saw something interesting, like evaluate it for
You
themselves,
saw
they kind of
something.
give you, isn't that what you were saying?
Yeah, I just want to be.
Yeah, I saw
clear
something
on how it's
interesting
framed.
today.
So
And
it's
I
not
wanted to
like
see what you
get
thought. I want you to
deceptive.
evaluate, see what you thought. It was about sleep, like owning it yourself and then asking them what their opinion is upon after looking at it. That's the premise?
Yeah, so the idea is you are honoring their opinion. So it's a compliment to their judgment is what is the reason this is more likely to do it. Plus, when people are watching or reading something from an evaluative brain versus a, boy, they think there's something wrong with me and I'm supposed to do it differently brain, then one of them resists change and the other is more open to it.
A great point.
Yeah, I guess I was just addressing the heart of, if my heart is really, I want her to watch it to help her, right? Because that's really what you believe. Her watching the video is probably going to help her.
Yeah.
If it's being framed in a way where it's a little,
Well, here's the deal. If she's asking for your,
can you review this for me? Like, if you look at this, you might get something from it.
That's
So
right.
okay. Okay.
I will trust that you know your situation better than I, so you use it any way you want to. The key
You'll know
here.
if you do it right. I'm 100%.
Trial and error.
You'll be getting feedback.
I'll try, yeah. All right.
Here's the challenge. When someone is asking for your help, they're more open to your suggestion. But when you bring data or information to them and they haven't asked for it, it can come across as there's something you're not doing right, and here's what you're supposed to do different. And that feels a little disrespectful.
And my wife does, she'll be like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I always feel like, I don't really talk to her about it, but like, it's exactly that. I shut down.
Yeah.
I almost don't want to do it because she's telling me to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
they're different business.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it's about.
Okay.
Okay.
We're doing it. We're moving. Just so you all know, Dave Edwards had a negative reaction to the caffeine
To the
that he
coffee.
had
He was looking bad.
because that's a long COVID reaction. So he's in his car taking a nap, taking care of himself.
Smart. He did not look good at all.
No,
He
I've never seen him look that way
Oh, when he
before.
was there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's
That
in
guy
his-
runs like, not triathlons, what's that thing that he does? Those
Ultra
Echo
marathons.
Challenge.
Ultra, well,
That guy's
they're
an
talking
animal.
Joe Butler because he does it. with
Yeah,
it.
Joel Butler.
I didn't.
If
see
Dave has a
Skip off.
negative reaction to caffeine now, that's going to be really rough.
Oh.
Because I will tell you, like about not even a mile, call it like hour 6, he starts like ingesting caffeine, and then somewhere around hour 30 or 100, right, he's still going strong. So negative caffeine reaction is not going to do that man well.
Yep,
That
well,
might be
now-
good information. I'm not sure he would recommend that to someone he loves. You know, that's another way of looking at this. Maybe.
There's another option, which is don't do the race, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the option I choose.
Go to sleep.
Take a nap.
We're rolling.
That is always an option, but that is not going to happen.
There you go. Right. Okay, so I know you're eager to hear how to get these people to shift. So let me go to my slides here, and I will give you my best thoughts on that.
Exactly.
This is what you were waiting for, man.
I will kind of give you a heads up here. Part 3 of the system is the hardest part of the system. Everybody here can do part 1 and part 2. Whether you will or not is up to you, but everybody here can do the brain model. Everybody here can start in the morning, reboot around lunchtime, reboot on the drive home. There's going to be some new skills and new perspectives in part 3 that are going to take some practice and going to take some time. And I just want you to be aware of that so you don't expect to do it right away. Just kind of notice what you like about it, what's meaningful, what's new, what's helpful, and then begin to practice that with, you could actually practice it with each other, or you could, get in touch with me if you wanted to either way. But I just want to give you a heads up on that. So here's what we need to, the first question we need to ask ourselves when we're dealing with a difficult person and they're not taking accountability, not listening, argumentative, irrational. And of course, in the past, we got stressed, angry, frustrated, annoyed, and they got worse and we got worse. And now we're caught in a cycle with this person. So we're talking about the what, the why, and the how. The new what is being caught in a cycle with this person. And you don't want to do that because when we react to them, they see us as the difficult person. And they react to our reaction to them. And now we're caught in a cycle. And there's 2 brain stems involved here. I call this banging brain stems. They're in theirs, we're in ours. Nobody's listening to anybody. So the first question you want to ask yourself whenever you're dealing with a difficult person is, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this person in my life? Because as you might imagine, it's going to take some time and some energy and some effort and some skill to get someone to shift from their resistant brain to their receptive brain. And you only want to devote that kind of time and energy and skill to someone who is important enough to do it, to put, to give you that deserves it really. Now, in my humble opinion, there's 2 ways of making someone important. We can love them and respect them, that makes them important, or we can resent them and be frustrated by them, that makes them important. Because the person we're thinking about is them. So let's take an example of someone who isn't important. We're driving down the road, somebody cuts us off on the freeway. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important do we want that person to be in our life? 0, right? So how do we deal with someone who isn't important? We don't give them a second thought. We don't run them over and over in our mind. If we run them over and over in our mind, we have just made them the most important person in our life. So you don't want to go forward making unimportant people important. So you want to start practicing dealing with unimportant people as if your kids were watching and you wanted to teach them how to deal with bad drivers or some clerk that doesn't give you the service you want. Rather than being triggered by that, practice choosing a quality or characteristic that allows you to be effective with these folks. Now, let's talk about the important people, people in your family, in your organization, people that you want to be more influential with. And they're being stubborn, not taking accountability, not listening, argumentative, irrational, rude, etc. The question we got to ask ourselves now is, okay, what is my purpose with this person? Because in the past, when we were dealing with someone who was being difficult, what do we want that difficult person to do? Change, right? Stop being so difficult. So let me show you something about change. Everybody make a fist as tight as you can. Tight, tight, tight. Now, if someone were to come along and try to force your fist open, what would be your initial response? Tighter, right? Yeah. I call this the lesson of the fist. Now, I love this little kid. I know he represents a lot of different memes, but the reason I love this little kid is whenever I'm dealing with a difficult person, I just imagine this little kid's inside going, no, no, no. That way, I don't try to give them data. I don't try to go to a solution. I don't try to be rational with them. They're not in the part of the brain that can hear any of that. So the lesson of the fist says, anytime we try to force someone to change or make them change, they will almost always either resist us or resent us or both. And as a result, become more motivated to defend their position. I'm sure you've seen that happen. Now we know why. Because they're stuck in the lower 20% of the brain. So here's what we need to know about people who are stuck in their brainstem. Initially, they will hear almost any suggestion that they change as criticism and will once again start defending the very behavior you want them to change. So let's assume we're dealing with one of these folks and they're being stubborn, offensive, unreasonable, rude, insulting, not listening, argumentative, irrational, etc. And hey, we're human beings. So in the past, we might have found ourselves, I don't know, get a little frustrated, a little stressed, a little defensive, annoyed, resentful, understandable. The problem is when we react to them, they see us as the difficult person. Of course, we know they are the difficult person. So if you ever find yourself caught in this kind of cyclic conversation in the future, there is a brand new rule I want you to remember. I call it the you stupid idiot rule. The you stupid idiot rule says, whenever you're talking with someone, you never want to talk with them in such a way that they could put you stupid idiot on the end of anything you say. Like, no, we can't do it that way. I've told you 5 times. I just don't know any other way of telling you.
You stupid idiot.
Or it's in the manual. Didn't you read the manual? Or with our kids, what were you thinking? How many times have we talked about this? See, when we talk to people in such a way where they can put you stupid idiot on the end of anything we say, they will put it on there whether we say it or not, and it will drive them deeper into their resistant brain. We don't want them going deeper into their resistant brain. We want them going to their receptive brain. So I've created a model that I call the neuroscience of conflict resolution, or the 6 blocks or obstacles to effective communication and influence, and an antidote to each one. I'm going to go through the 6 blocks and the antidotes, and then I'm going to turn the seminar over to you so that you can ask questions about how to use the model with a certain person. Notice I didn't say on a certain person, I said with a certain person. Nice distinction. All right, 6 blocks or obstacles to effective communication and influence, and an antidote to each one. Here's the first block, no real surprise. We've been talking about it all morning. Our negative state of mind. Here's what we've learned. If we are stressed, frustrated, anxious, annoyed, resentful, overwhelmed, whatever, it means now we are stuck in this lower 20% of the brain. And if we're stuck in the lower 20% of the brain, we do not have access to the knowledge and skills that reside in the upper 80% of the brain. Plus, here's what we've also learned. Our frustration, our stress, our resentment will leak into our nonverbals. They will interpret our frustration as criticism, and they will put you stupid idiot on the end of pretty much anything we say. So remember that quote from Albert Einstein, problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. We got to know what our highest purpose is. And just like going into life in the top of the mind, it's going to be really important to go into conversations in the top of the mind, where we in advance have chosen qualities or characteristics that make the statement we want to make about who we are, something we would teach to someone we love, that have the potential to be effective and are purposeful. This is the first step, like my models to spell things, so now this spells step. This is the first step in creating a solution-focused conversations. Notice in the past how we've gone into situations worried or concerned or frustrated or being triggered. That ain't gonna work here. Also, if we want people to be able to really tell us what's really going on, they have to be able to count on us not to get upset. Because if they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing and we're going to lose it, then they're just going to kind of tiptoe through the process, telling us what we want to hear, but not really going to the whole perspective of what's really going on. In other words, yeah.
So, like with my employees in my personal life, with my family and friends, I understand and I can connect with what you're saying, and I see areas for improvement. And I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, but like, isn't "you stupid idiot" appropriate sometimes? And I want to talk about like a vendor, you know what I mean? And so you have a regional vice president who doesn't look at us as a customer, right? So you try to have all these steps, you don't get through. So then I just go to their boss and pulverize them. And now I'm important to that person. I've won both the battle and the war because now I've got that person doing exactly what it is that I need them to do. And I recognize that's a very aggressive approach, but it accomplished the goal. And so I'm wondering, is that something now I have to think more about to be, because I've tried to finesse people in the way that we're going through in the past, and that doesn't always work. And so I leave it at vendors, because with vendors, I feel like I'm their customer. And they're going to need to do things in the way that I need it to be done in order for us to be successful together. And not everyone understands that.
Yeah, good point. So here's the deal. Let me address that. Number one, you did that on purpose. That wasn't a reaction. That was a purposeful thing you did in order to accomplish a particular goal. And frankly, the vendor wasn't that important to you. You wanted the vendor to engage you in a way that you felt good about, and you went to the leverage that their boss had, and that worked. So I have no problem with that. Okay. Now, when you say I've tried this before, we've only talked about step 1 of 6. So I'm going to suggest let me get through the model, because there's going to be some things at the very end that are really all about getting people to shift. However, I have no problem with you doing what you think is the right thing, as long as it's purposeful, as long as you would recommend it to someone you love, and it's effective. I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So here's the concept of accountability in a different way, because a lot of times leaders have a problem with their people. Their people don't want to be accountable, and they get real frustrated about that. And they come to me and they say, "Bill, why aren't people willing to be accountable?" And I said, well, here's the reason. To some people in organizations, especially people down the food chain, accountability can mean who's to blame if something goes wrong. And since they don't want to be blamed and they don't want to be shamed, they resist being accountable. So when I'm doing a workshop for an organization and accountability is a big deal, I help the organization redefine the word. I make accountability the ability to be counted upon. Accountability is the ability to be counted upon. Everybody wants to be counted upon. So here's the deal. If we want people to trust us and really tell us what's going on, they've got to know that they can count on us to stay in the top of the mind and to stay curious and stay positive versus going into that kind of old reactive way. Very important. Block number 2, are trying to convince someone to stop or change some negative behavior. Have you noticed a lot of times when you tell someone they're doing something wrong, very rarely do they say, "Oh, well, thank you for sharing, I feel so much better." They start defending it or blaming somebody else. So you don't want to drive them deeper into that resistant brain. So in addition to knowing the qualities or characteristics you want to bring to the conversation and being 100% accountable for that, you want to know also, what do I want to bring out? This is really important, because our middle brain only wants to see their negative behavior, and it will paint their entire being with this negative brush. But really, this is only who they are when they're coming from the lower 20% of the brain. You're not trying to stop their worst. You're trying to access their best. In order to access their best, you got to have some idea of what their best looks like. So if they're part of your organization, do they do anything well? If so, you hold an image of who they are when they're doing what they do well, because that's the part of them you're going to want to connect with a little bit later in the model. But unless you're, and if they're part of your family, what do they love to do? What do they get excited about? Otherwise, you're just trusting that lower brain to paint their entire being with this negative brush. And if you try to tell people they shouldn't be this way, very few people will change as a result of that. So you want to know what you want to bring, and you want to know what you want to bring out. Frankly, this is a really good distinction between a manager and a leader. You know, a manager manages processes in order to create certain outcomes. The problem managers have is when they try to manage people the way they manage processes. Anybody here like to be managed? A leader, on the other hand, is really all about having a vision and having the people see you as someone they want to emulate, someone they want to go that extra mile for. I love this definition of a leader from Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. She says a leader is anyone, so not just anybody at the top, anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in themselves and others, and then has the courage to develop that potential. In other words, would it be fair to say that our job as leaders is frankly to bring out the best in everybody around us? Certainly that's our job as parents as well. In order to do that, we got to hold some image of who they are at their best. Otherwise, we're trusting this middle brain to only see their worst. Here's another quote that might help. It says, true vision is the ability to see in others more than they are showing you. Don't get fooled by the mask. That's a mask of fear and insecurity. They're afraid you don't like them. They're afraid you don't value their opinion. They're afraid you don't won't listen to them. They're afraid you won't do what they want you to do. They're afraid you're going to blame them. They're afraid you're going to shame them. They're afraid, they're afraid, they're afraid. I like to see difficult people as frightened because they're coming from the fear-based part of the brain. That helps me not take their behavior personally and ask the question, who are they when they're not in that frightened brain? And it helps me connect with that. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Block number 3, have you noticed these people have a belief, they have a concern, they have a perspective, and they think they are right about whatever it is they think. Have you noticed that? So let's assume we got 2 people, and these 2 people are represented by these 2 cups, us and them. And let's assume that this represents the facts. Crystal clear. Most people think that everybody should see the facts the same way. Have you noticed that isn't the case? And now we know why. Our brain will color how we see the facts. Some people see the facts one way. Other people see the facts another way. Same facts, different perspective, different idea. So now we got these 2 different perspectives. This is our perspective, pretty blue perspective. Their perspective looks like piss. That's all there is to it. In other words, when we're talking with someone and they are just so wrong, we have a tendency to go, come on, you can't think that's right. You shouldn't be yellow, you should be blue. That's going to have them arguing for the validity of yellow. We don't want them arguing for the validity of yellow. We want them open to our ideas. How do we get them to be open to our ideas? Well, as Vistage members, you have been taught to listen. So I'm going to encourage you to take that one step further based on what we've learned about the brain. The first thing you want to do is listen and learn. That's where that curiosity component comes in. What part of the brain are they coming from? Because if they're stuck in the lower brain, remember, this is not the time to give them data. This is not the time to go to a solution. This is not the time to try to be rational with them. They're not in the part of the brain that can hear and understand any of that. The next thing you want to learn is, what is this? Because I'm going to suggest this contains initially the key to their cooperation, because it contains what's important to them. It may contain what is concerning them at the moment, but regardless, it contains what is influencing them at the moment. You've heard the perception or the phrase, perception is reality. However they're perceiving this relationship, this conversation is their reality. Trying to tell them they're wrong will only have them defending the reality. But if we're able to find out what this is, now we can begin to understand it better and engage it more. So how do we find out? Well, we could ask them. We could say, hey, help me understand what's in the way here. Help me understand what you want me to know about this. Hold on for a second. The blue wasn't quite blue enough here, so I had to fix it a little bit. Help me understand what I'm missing here? What do you want me to know about this? Because it actually changes the color of the conversation. They now see us not as someone who's trying to change them, but someone who is interested in what's important to them. Isn't that what we want them to be with us? We want them to be interested in what's important to us. So we've just modeled doing with them what we want them to do with us. Plus, when you ask someone, hey, help me understand what's important to you here, most people go, well, I'm so glad you asked. It's this and this and this and this. Now, we have information we didn't have before. We've always known our ideas. Now we know their ideas. Puts us in a very powerful position, begin to blend these two and create what Stephen Covey calls the third alternative, where we're blending what's important to them with what's important to us. That's a key to creating a solution-focused conversation. We can only do that, however, if we're willing to listen. And have you noticed how hard it is to listen when someone is just being so wrong? I think one of the reasons it's hard is because we grew up believing or experiencing listening being the less powerful perspective. I mean, when we were little kids and our parents or teachers were upset with us, we were supposed to listen. So we grew up believing that powerful people talk and less powerful people listen. And that has us wanting to kind of jump in and interrupt and talk our way through a situation. Here's a quote about listening you might like. It says, wisdom is the reward we get for listening all of those times we would have preferred to talk. And the wisdom and the reward is we find out what's important to them, we find out what's in the way of them hearing what we want them to hear, and we find out what is influencing them at the moment. That puts us in a wonderful position to deal with block number 4, their fear that we don't get it. See, hearing it is one thing, getting is another. And until they know we get it, they are in the position of convincing us of the righteousness of their perspective. That's why listening and empathizing is in every communication model you're ever going to find. But here's what I've noticed. Nice people have a tendency to empathize too much because it thinks it solves the problem. It doesn't. It's a bridge to solving the problem, but it doesn't solve the problem. Other people don't want to empathize at all because it sounds like I'm agreeing with them. But here's what you want to do. The reason you empathize is to free the person from the need to convince you that they have a right to think and feel what they think and feel. Because as long as it's a debate about whether they have a right to think and feel what they think and feel, then they're in a defensive or offensive perspective. They're not listening to anything you say. And frankly, it takes maybe a couple of seconds. It doesn't take that long. You can say something like, I can see how you'd see it that way. I can see how that would be important to you. And I'm curious, and here's where you ask a question. So you use the word and, never but. You never say, I can see how you see it that way, but. You want to always use and then you ask a question. I'll show you what the question looks like in a minute. But the empathizing frees them from the need to convince you that they have a right to think and feel what they think and feel. That's going to have them more open. By the way, here's something you need to know about people who are being defensive. They're not just defending their position. They're defending their judgment. They're defending themselves. If you want to know why someone gets so upset over some little issue, it's not the little issue they're so upset about. They're hearing their judgment criticized or their character criticized. And boy, that will throw them into the lower brain quicker than anything. So for what
and validation one and the same. So are you
yeah, it kind of is. But here's you want to make sure the reason you're doing it is to free them from the need to convince you of the righteousness of their perspective. So validation, empathy, either one is absolutely fine. See, the difference between, like I said, a little bit of a difference between validation. Someone can tell me that assume when someone breaks into my room and says, Bill, I believe that Martians are controlling our brainwaves. Well, I'm not going to validate that because I don't believe that Martians are controlling our brainwaves. But I can say something like, whoa, man, I can see how you'd be concerned about that. I can see how that would be important to you. And I can do that very authentically. And they go, oh, well, okay. So now I can move on to whether or not Martians are controlling our brainwaves because he no longer needs to defend that position. So I guess there may be I hadn't thought about the difference between validation and empathy. If you can truly validate a situation authentically, that's great. But if not, just kind of tell them you can understand how they'd see it that way. I can see how that would be important to you. That has people, you'll be amazed people go, oh, Okay, well, fine, thank you. See, most people will never tell them that. So you now become a special person in their life that they're going to be more open to as you move through the model. Speaking of the model, let's look at block number 5, our tendency to focus on the problem and the past. If you're talking with someone about something that happened in the past, especially if it was a negative experience, chances are they're going to remember it one way, you remember it another. It becomes a debate about who's right. So step 5 is where the magic happens. Remember, we're getting people to shift from the resistant brain to the receptive brain. The shifting happens in step 5. 1, 2, 3, and 4 set up step 5. Remember what we've learned about questions. Questions are the search engine for the brain. So if you want someone to shift from the resistant brain to the receptive brain, you go into the conversation clear about what you want to bring. You're clear about who they are at their best. That's what I want to bring out. You listen and learn what's important to them. You let them know you get it. And then you ask a top of the mind question. Top of the mind question is almost always a question about the solution in the future, not about the problem in the past. And it blends what's important to them with what's important to you. I'll give you examples of what that looks like when you give me the examples of the people that you're dealing with. One more block we got to be careful about, then I'm going to turn the seminar over to you for questions. This is something us Vistage folks do all the time. We have a tendency to go to problem solving too soon. Hey, we're problem solvers and we don't have a lot of time. I get it. But if we go to problem solving before someone has shifted from the problem brain to the solution brain, they're not going to hear our solution, even if it's a great solution, because they're not in the part of the brain that actually hears solutions. They're still in that problem brain. So you always want to make problem solving the last step. You don't try to solve the problem until they've shifted to the solution focused part of the brain, and you'll know they've shifted because they'll answer question 5 in the affirmative. I'll always show you what that looks like in a minute. So let's make this about real life. Be thinking about a conversation in the past that didn't go well. Could be someone in your family, someone in your organization. Let's see if any of these blocks were present. Did maybe we go into that conversation worried or concerned, or maybe did we get triggered in the middle of that conversation? Were we trying to convince someone to stop or change some behavior? Did we really know what was important to them? Or maybe a better question is, did they know that we knew what was important to them? Did they have some fear that we didn't get it because we didn't tell them we got it? Were we maybe focusing on the problem in the past, and maybe did we go to problem solving too soon? If so, you now know why that conversation didn't work. So in terms of the what, the why, and the how, this is the what, getting caught in a cycle with these people. This is the why, here's the how. It's all about clarity, confidence, and creativity. We go into the conversation clear about who we are, the qualities we want to bring, and clear about our willingness and responsibility to be 100% accountable for staying in the top of the mind, no matter what they say, no matter what they do. If we get triggered, that's the time to postpone the conversation, because now we're just banging brainstems. We're also clear now who they are at their best. We're holding an image of what they do well so that we know what we want to bring out. We listen and learn what's important to them. We let them know we get it. We ask the top of the mind question, and then we go to problem solving. Here's a way of thinking about the top of the mind question, because I know that's the hardest part of the model. What is your goal with this person? What do you want them to do differently in the future? And how will that fit with what's important to them? That's why knowing what's important to them is so important. One thing I think we all want is when we're talking with people, especially in our family and our organization, we want them to trust us. So what we've got to recognize, in order for them to trust us, we've got to be coming from the trustworthy part of who we are. This is a whole lot easier to trust than this. We've also got to recognize that the part of them that makes a decision about whether they trust us is not their conscious mind. They're not making a conscious decision about trusting us. They just feel like they can trust us or not. And the part of the brain that will allow them to feel like they can trust us is this middle brain, and that has a concept about psychological safety. Google did a 10-year study called the Aristotle Project. They looked at what makes an effective team. And they found that psychological safety, people feeling safe with each other to really say what's really going on, is the key component. Unfortunately, these blocks will get in the way of both trust and psychological safety, whereas this model is designed to promote it. If we're willing to go into the conversation knowing what we want to bring, knowing what we want to bring out, finding out what's important to them, letting them know we get it, asking that top of the mind question, and then going to problem solving. Okay, let me give you as many examples as I can about what this looks like. What I need from you, I'm about to turn the seminar over to you. I need to know a particular person that you're having some difficulty with. Could be a family member, could be someone in your organization. I'll show you how I would use this model to get them potentially to shift. Because you use the model differently with kids than you do with spouses, than you do with people who report to you, than you do with, your partner, that kind of stuff. So we've got about 25 minutes. The seminar is now yours.
Okay. I'll start with my wife. The easiest examples, because they happen more frequently, I would say. But the most recent one is when we went out of town to Capitola recently, because I've been real stressed with work and wanted to get some time for us to at least get a change of scenery and get some connection time. First night, we find a nice restaurant, we go out to eat, and then basically the cycle that you described is exactly what happens, because I see she changes her attitude, or something that she does affects me, where then how she behaves hurts me some way, and I usually get angry and frustrated with how she acts. And then I'm now, even when I ask questions, it comes from a place of criticalness or other things. And she's very sensitive, so she senses and detects. It feels like any ounce of pride or criticalness in my tone, even when I'm trying to flatter myself, like, hey, I'm just asking questions to actually understand, but she feels offended. Then we get into it, and then she storms off. So that hasn't happened in a while, to be frank, but that was, and we laughed about it the next day, and we made up pretty quickly, which was great. But in the moment, we're going at it, it's really pride versus pride. But the small thing that happened was I asked her for her phone, because I left my phone at the hotel purposefully so I could not be having a distraction, right, for that night. But we were talking about something that was real chill. We had great food. Then I said, hey, let me see your phone. I wanted to look something up. She said, there's no reception here. So basically, she felt like I shouldn't want the phone because she already confirmed that there's no reception here. So it's not going to work. And I was like, all right, I still want to see it, because I was just thinking, how no reception might change from the moment. So I was like, well, let me just see if I can get a bar. So I get the phone. She actually gives me the phone, and I'm looking at it, and then, but her attitude changed. She's like hurt the fact that I asked her, because she felt like she was not trusted, or like I don't respect what she says. So then that turned into some back and forth, and then she storms off. I'm a little embarrassed in a restaurant. I'm thinking she's gonna come back. She doesn't. And then I pay the bill. She leaves a note on my car. I took an Uber. So she's at the hotel, and then I meet her there. Obviously I go back. And then we, like I said, we were able to talk about it. I knew I needed to humble out first, oftentimes, and then I just apologized by the time I saw her. But in the moment, I want to know how to approach that, because that's often what happens. Is I feel her change of mood or her insecurity is like very uncomfortable for me. Like, I don't understand why you would feel insecure about me just saying, I want to see your phone. I'm going to troubleshoot a little bit, because I may be able to figure out, like, I turn it off. So anyway, so she can be sensitive, and then I get triggered by that. And then I start to be colder or maybe impatient. And then she now sees me as the issue, So anyways, I'll stop there.
Perfect. No, it's a perfect example. So let's kind of look at that as if we're watching a movie, okay? So number one, you and your wife love each other. It's not like you don't care about each other. It's just that you trigger each other. Now, remember what's really been going on. When you say she gets a certain way and that makes me a certain way, remember what's going on. Your middle brain is misinterpreting her as dangerous and throwing you into the lower brain that's designed to deal with danger. Her middle brain is misinterpreting you as the same way. So that's kind of what's going on. So to make sure we understand, it's your two middle brains missing each other and misinterpreting what's going on. So here's the deal. You want to make sure that you're not just trying to solve problems, but when you're with someone you love, you're actually engaging her in a way where she feels loved. So here's how I would do that differently. You be her and I'll be you. Okay? So we're sitting there at the restaurant and I say, hey, honey, let me see your phone a minute. I want to see if I can look something up.
I already tried. There's no reception here.
Oh, okay. Well, I tell you what, one of the things that I wanted to do to make sure that we had time together was I wanted to leave my phone at home because I didn't want to be interrupted because my time with you is really, really important. Would you be okay with me just trying it? It's very possible that I can't get a bar, and if I can't, hey, no big deal. I'd love to be able to try it. Is that okay with you? Would you be okay with that?
Okay, I guess.
Cool, thanks.
I think she'll be pissed off.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, do you think she'd still be upset by that
Nah,
question?
I don't.
See, here's the deal. Notice my tone of voice. And here's what I did that I think that you left the phone at home as a way of connecting with your wife. But she didn't know that. She didn't know you did that on purpose, and she didn't know how meaningful that was to you. And plus, I was asking for it not in a, hey, just give me the damn phone, you stupid idiot kind of stuff. I wouldn't go in.
Just give me your phone, man.
That's right, because see, I wasn't triggered. And frankly, it's not about the phone. I call that the issue du jour, okay? It could be about almost any little thing. You don't want to make the issue the who's right debate. What you want to say is, okay, I'm going to have dinner with the person I love more than life itself. So number one, what are the qualities or characteristics I want to bring to that dinner? And how willing am I to be 100% accountable for staying in the top of the mind no matter what happens? Because if I need her to be a certain way so that I don't get triggered, I am not taking accountability for who I am. I'm blaming her for making me feel a certain way. So she loves you more than life itself. You love her more than life itself. But right now, you guys are getting into debates about who's right about some issue. And she feels dismissed and you feel criticized, and that's what is going at it. So one of the things you can do is say, I'm going to make a determination that anytime that I'm talking with the person I love, I'm going to do it as if my kids are watching and taking notes. And I want to show them how two loving people talk to each other. So that becomes a higher purpose. Now you're going into these conversations, beautiful conversations that you've created, the dinner, in a whole brand new way. And you might even tell her that. She says, I've been thinking about some of our conversations in the past. And I'm not sure I went into those conversations being the person I want to be, who loves you more than life itself. So I'm going to start doing that differently in the future. I'm going to start making sure that our time together is really special and that you feel loved whenever you hear me talk with you. I may not be able to do it great, so be gentle with me because I'm learning it, but I want you to know I'm making a real effort to do that. I bet she would just be floored and feel really, really loved by that.
Nice. I agree.
Was that helpful?
Yeah, that's very helpful.
You're welcome. There's
Mark, we'll see you. You got to pick up. Mark's has to leave, pick up his kids.
My kids, and if I'm not on time, we'll be
Okay.
going.
All right, Mark. Glad you were
See you.
here this
Thanks,
morning.
Bill.
Yep. Thank you,
All right,
Mark.
we'll see you, Mark.
someone's got your hand up there. It's Michelle.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious on your, with your background, education, experience, everything. When you as the person is attempting to, like what you just said, the later part, right, where you're, I love my life itself and I just want to do better, all this sort of stuff. How would you classify the relationship, or I guess maybe where a person sits in your life? And this is professional, person, doesn't matter, where you do this and you really try and make those efforts, or not try, you make those efforts, period. And the reception is still, or it's almost like it's making it worse, because I know I've had this in personal and professional, where the more I'm trying to help the situation, the more I'm trying to empathize, the more, I can go through these steps as much as I can, but I feel at times some people just simply don't want to make it better. And it's really difficult, if not impossible, to make those relationships and that communication work. But sometimes you have to, right? Or sometimes you have to for a short time, or or whatever. Or maybe you don't have to. I don't know. That's why
Well,
I'm
here's the
asking
deal.
question.
You clearly sound like a nice person. I'm sure you're a nice person. And I'm sure when you're in talking to people, you're being a nice person. I think what's missing is they don't hear you talking about something that's important to them. So you really haven't got step 3 yet. You haven't got what's important to them. So that's what I think is missing. If you'll give me a specific example, I'll give you a way of maybe getting that.
I mean, it's interesting because right now I'm there in all areas of my life, but especially like in my workplace, there's just huge change going on. And so a lot of these conversations will be, I'm trying to learn what's important to the person. I'm really like, I'm asking whatever they don't want to share. There's just a block there. And maybe, there's a lot of dynamics that I won't go into, but that could be part of why there's a block. Or maybe it's me, maybe it's the way I'm approaching. But for example, one of our very, very long-term, he's been in the company for like 30 years, but he's been in the leadership position in our production. I come from manufacturing. So in our production side, he is the general foreman. He is the quote unquote top dog from a hierarchy standpoint. But let's just put it this way. We just recently discovered that part of our financial problem that's been really hurting us is because of his mismanagement. And that's his job as a foreman. His entire job with anybody that has that title in our industry is to manage productivity to ensure we're profitable or at least breaking even in production. And he's completely failing at that. But then a couple other things where, I've had discussion where we all agree, we all talk about a project. I let them give me the deadlines. I let them tell me if it's even important to them, because I don't want to make us do something that nobody wants to do. Like, I just don't find value in that. So I feel we're all on board. Everyone says they're on board. We say we're excited, cool. And then, check-in comes in and nothing's happened. And this was one of the recent discussions where I'm like, what's going on, in a different way, in a very not beat around the bush, eggshell walking way. What is going on? Why isn't anybody asking for help, saying anything about maybe has anybody lost agreement in doing this, or, blah, 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 right? Sometimes I just get like crickets, and then, sometimes it's like, wow, I don't know, it's a bunch of nonsense. And I'm like, I don't, and sometimes I end up going, okay, well, let's talk about this another time. Because I'll ask.
Here's what I hear. When you say, why is this not working, or what's going on? They hear something is wrong and you need to tell me why it's wrong. So you're talking about the problem or the past, and they're feeling like you're blaming them for it. That's why they shut down, or crickets, or that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I would go to them and I would say something like, hey, I remember our conversations in the past, and it sounds like we were kind of all on the same page, or we were kind of excited about where we're going, fair to say? And I would wait for them to say yes. And I would say, and we all know that stuff happens, you can make a plan and sometimes things get in the way of the plan. So what I'm looking for is your expertise. Based on our conversations there and where we are now, what would you say we need to do differently in the future in order to move this forward? I know you're really good at what you do. I want you to kind of tap into your expertise and come maybe give me some thoughts about how do we need to do this differently? We know we didn't want this to happen. So knowing what we know now, how can we do it differently going forward? So now you're talking about the future, and you're talking about their success, and you're no longer asking why it's not working. So I think that's going to be a big shift in them being willing to do it. And I'm also honoring their expertise to kind of give me some sense of what we can do differently. Because frankly, the only time you can change any behaviors in the future. So talking about why it isn't working now or in the past, most people will have a hard time with that, because they'll hear that as who's to blame, and they'll shut down.
I guess the difficult part of this is that the second half that you were just describing is what happened the meeting prior. And then it's, and maybe me, because I'm like, in the state of, and also I should probably point out, because it might be important for context, this person is at the age of retiring and they get their full pension. So I feel that there is absolutely no incentive from this person, excuse my French, to give a damn. They're just watching the clock and trying to pick a time that works for them. That's how everybody feels, but I'm trying not to let that cloud my judgment, because I know this person deep down doesn't want to be failing, but that their ego doesn't allow them to ask for help or say, I don't know. So the conversations, I'll have a couple, you know, in our group. These are all group meetings, right? So our group, but I'm also asking this question in preparation for one-on-ones that I'm going to have in a couple of weeks with everybody, right? So what I'm trying to frame my mind or figure out, how can I shift these conversations to try, because I don't want this person to go out with an assisted retirement. I really want there to be a successful end of career relationship with this person. I don't want it to be about what isn't happening. So I'm trying to listen and learn. I'm trying to empathize, but I feel like the other person isn't participating.
Yeah, and you may be describing a situation that really isn't about a model. It's about a dynamic.
Okay.
So the only thing I would ask the question is, number one, does this person do anything well?
Right now, my judgment's very clouded. I would say, and I know this sounds really petty, but I think this person right now in our group meetings, because I've heard otherwise, I think this person does well right now by not getting into that fight or flight where they're aggressive and, you know, cursing and whatnot in our group meeting. So I think that, but everybody does that well in that meeting, but knowing that person's background, I think they're doing that well. But I think right now, consistency, they do that well. They show up, they do, I don't know, but they show up and they're there and they haven't given up, even though all the signs are pointing.
They've been with the company for a long time, right? Have they done anything well in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I mean, he's a great fabricator. He's been a very talented, knowledgeable fabricator.
Okay, great. And what do you want him to do differently in the future?
I want him to, I don't know if vulnerability is the right word, but I want him to say when he doesn't know something and needs help, whether it's in public or private. I want him to admit his limits or what have you, because I can't move forward probably the right way if I don't know what his limitations are. And mind you, everybody has, not expect, because that's a harsh word, but everybody knows that I'm looking for what their limitations are so I can help make it better, not to criticize or put them down. I don't want to put round pegs in a square hole or in square holes.
Right,
So,
but here's the challenge. If they see you looking for their limitations, they will not feel eager to participate in that.
okay. So should I change it to highlighting their strengths and then filling the gaps?
Yeah, and highlighting their strengths and kind of then transferring that to how you'd like them to be in the future, so that they see that and tying it to what's important to them. So while I get looking for their limitations so that you can help them change it, I totally get why you would see that as caring. They see that as critical, and that is going to have them resisting what you do. So I would spend some time making sure that they know how much you admire and respect the things they do really, really well. And what I've noticed, if I start looking at what someone does really, really well, there's some skill that they've done that if they could do it now, it would actually move their career forward in a meaningful way. So it's not like I'm trying to get them to reinvent the wheel. I just want them to take a skill that they've already kind of demonstrated in some past experience and bring it into this situation. So that has me honoring that past skill and suggesting, if you could bring that into this situation, I think people would be listening more to you. They would be really hearing what you have to say, and all of the wisdom and all of the experience that you've accumulated over these years would be something that would really be valuable to the organization. And I think you would feel more respected as a result of that. Is that something you'd be willing to try? See how that's different?
Yeah. Okay. No, that sounds good, because I definitely want them to feel like they're part of this.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you got a tough situation.
Quick question, kind of what Michelle was talking about is you have this 30-year, I think Michelle, you said 30-year, like crusty, guy that's been around doing things the same way.
Yeah.
That there's bias, like you see these older people, like she's a woman and now running the company. And if you notice as a leader a bias, do you follow the same process, or is there something different that you do when you know that it's something that is like a mental block for them in that way?
My humble opinion, now this is just me, I'm totally fine with you doing this any way you do it, right? So I'll trust each of you and who you are. But when you see someone has a negative bias, and all of a sudden that becomes your focus, you're trying to get them to stop that negative bias. And they're going to hear that as criticism because you're trying to get them to stop their worst. I would spend more time finding out something they do well and transferring that to how I want them to be in the future and tying that to something that's important to them. I think that's going to be a much more successful way of shifting that perspective. But you never even address the bias, because when you tell someone they have a negative bias, very few people go, oh yeah, I do, and I like it, or no, I don't. I mean, very few people go, oh wow, I didn't know that, thank you for sharing, I'm going to change. They don't hear that as valuable information, they hear it as criticism.
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting you confront a bias, but knowing that a bias exists. I mean, it could just be that this guy hates, doesn't want to work for a woman, and that is real. And yet it's something the man's never going to say. So then how do you overcome those types of things? That's I wasn't thinking that you would attack that. Like, I think you're biased, because obviously that would drive you deeper.
Obviously. So here's what I would do. If this is really important in your organization, and if this person doesn't change, you're willing to let this person go, then I would bring them into your office and I would say, hey Sam, there's something I kind of want to point out to you and see if we could make some changes going forward. Number one, I see you doing a great job here and I think you're doing a wonderful job. But let's assume this is an interview and I'm looking at your resume and I'm looking at your experience and I say, Sam, I think you're going to be really good at working in this particular situation. There's just one thing that whoever takes this job has to be really okay with. And that is working with a leader, no matter what gender they are, working with men, working with women, and they've got to be totally fine with that. If you knew that was a criteria for taking the job, would you take the job? And you don't say a word until they say yes, no, or I don't know. If they say yes, of course, you say great. So I tell you what, given that, so-and-so is the head of our organization, how do you want to be in the future? That shows this person how much you value them. How do you want to start engaging with this person to show them how much you value them? Because I think that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for someone who not only takes the job, but takes it seriously and is willing to really show the leader how much they're valued no matter what gender they are. So then I would start getting real specific about new behavior for this person. And then they're either going to do it or not.
Better self.
That's a great point.
You invite them into be your higher and better self.
That's right. And put them in an interview mindset. See, when people have an interview mindset, they're thinking about the future, and they're generally thinking pretty optimistically about the future. So it takes it away from, hey, you have a problem and you need to change, to here's what we're looking for. Is this a job you want? And if they say yes, you say, great, let's make sure that you get credit for doing it the way we're all looking for. What are the behaviors you want to bring to this perspective? And that'll have them doing that. By the way, just so you know, I've got a hard stop in about 3 minutes and I need about 3 minutes to wrap it up. So I guess I'm checking with Rich. Rich, you want me to stop and kind of
go for the wrap up?
Okay, go to the wrap up. For those of you who want to see as many examples, and you can tell this is kind of a nuanced thing. I have written my 8th book. It's called What to Say. So I've taken all the scenarios from my Vistage members and my seminars and I put it into 30 chapters. So feel free to pick that up if you like. Here is a map for part 3. We want to make sure that when we go into getting people to shift, we're clear about the lesson of the fifth. So we're not trying to force them to change, and we're not frustrated or stressed with them. That's the you stupid idiot rule. And we're reaching for their best. So we go in knowing what we want to bring. We go in knowing what we want to bring out. We listen and learn what's important to them. We let them know we get it. We use and versus but to transition to the question in the future. There is something that Rich is going to give everybody either in a printed form or in a PDF form, and it is a 1-page summary of everything we've talked about today. I call this a GPS for life because I think it shows us where we are, where we want to go, and how to use all of the models here to get us there. So it's step 1, step 2, or part 1, part 2, part 3. By the way, if you want to fold along the dotted lines, you could put a little piece of tape at the top of that and put that on your desk and flip it to whatever you want it to be. So hopefully this has been helpful. We started with that quote from Albert Einstein, problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. I've loved the way you've interacted today. You've jumped in with some great questions. It's been really a lot of fun. Remember, I call this getting paid to do what I would pay to do, and you guys really made it really meaningful today. Remember, you can engage me by email after this anytime you want my best thoughts about how to deal with any situation, personal or professional, and I'll be connecting with each of you, or Rich is going to send me a list of all the people who are here on the call and in person, and I'll make sure that you guys get in the drawing for the book. So this has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Rich, for the opportunity. You guys have been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Bill, thank you very much. We will continue this conversation. Thanks very much, Bill.
My pleasure. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So Rich, did you send me a version? Because I didn't.